Well, good morning, everybody. Yes, we are live from Johannesburg, in South Africa. Beautiful day in the Heartfelt. Great to be with you once again. Now, Elvis, today is a big day in the discussions around the legalization of cannabis here in South Africa.
The trial of the plant starts today, Eben. It's a big one, and of course we want to test South Africans and of course people on the continent about their thoughts on cannabis, and we're asking you that question on our poll today. Do you support the full legalization of cannabis in South Africa?
We've got 177 votes that have come in, and very interesting that 70% of them say yes.
Yeah, it's a fair reflection of what's happening on the streets here in South Africa. Also, I have to say, this trial is so massive. 7 government departments are being taken to the High Court here in South Africa. That's a North High Court in Pretoria today. The trial gets underway. You can watch it online in the live streaming facility if you want. Also, of course, 7 government departments, 7 ministers taken to court by the Dagga couple to free the plant, as they call it. Also, of course, in some of your tweets, let's just have a look at what people are saying.
Keenan Reiter says, those drugs, yes, drugs must never be legalized in South Africa.
Nkutalo says, I think the government supports the selling of drugs by allowing these cannibals in our country.
Yeah. He continues, he says, the legality of Dagga is giving problems to parents, especially in rural areas. As the youth say, they have the license to smoke now. Confusion there about the legality of Dagga.
Yeah, interesting views. Interesting views. The poll. Vote on the poll, because we'd like to see by the end of the show today what the numbers say about how you guys think with regards to the full legalization of cannabis. Also, the trial of the plant should be interesting. We will try and dip in there a little bit later. We'll speak to the plaintiffs, who are the Dagga couple, in a short while on the show. Also, we'll speak to a legal expert and also some of the other stakeholders within the cannabis community and, of course, other groups within the cannabis discussion. But it was a dark day for soccer in South Africa over the weekend. Once again, we relived the nightmare. Fortunately, not as many lives were lost, Ken.
But you know what? 2 lives were lost. We thought we're done with it back in 2001. Well, it's back to revisit us. That tragedy. Saturday Stampede at the FNB Stadium. 2 football fans killed, 17 injured. We want to find out from you, could that stadium disaster have been handled better?
That's the question we posed to you. Let's take a look at what you are telling us. This one coming from Zwandile says, maybe it's time to have more police in the stadiums to prevent such accidents from happening because stadium security has failed. Bring the soldiers to help, says Zwandile.
Yeah, clubs have to pay for more security at stadiums. That's what's always been the case, Ken.
Yes, Sono Abo says it can easily be avoided by buying a ticket early and going to the stadium on time. We can't blame anyone except ourselves. Tell you what, I think it's something we need to get into, Eben, and maybe have a chat about later.
We'll talk about that later. I have a problem with ticket scalpers being allowed by police to sell fake tickets outside of the stadium with impunity. This one from Molibongwe Elvis, he says,
soccer fans, for the sake of our safety, we need also to change the way we do things when attending a game. We can avoid things like this.
Yep. Don't go to a stadium when it's a sellout and you don't have a ticket. What are you going to go do there? That is some of the questions. But as some of our viewers have tweeted us already, saying to me on Facebook today that why do police and security officials turn a blind eye when they see tickets being sold on the streets? In Nasrec Road, I'm told, in Nasrec Road before the kickoff, fake tickets were going around like hotcakes. So these are concerns, but we'll try and delve into that, not just today, but later in the week as well. But it was a great week in rugby for South Africa this week, wasn't it?
Yeah, we made a massive noise about it come Friday morning when we were looking at that semi-final by Lions against Hurricanes. I know you were wearing your colours on your sleeve, and so were you. And they went and won.
Well, and of course, the first half, you didn't think they were going to win.
Yeah, Elvis had told me after they went down 22-3, shortly before halftime, he left the TV set and came back when things changed a bit.
Yeah, my son called me and said, you better come and watch now. You're missing out.
And the Lions, they did it. They pulled off that sensational comeback win to reach the final. Phenomenal stuff by them. What do you make of it?
Nkutalo says to us, that was fantastic play by the Lions. It certainly was. The way they played in that second half showed a lot of guts.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more.
Alfinho says it was amazing.
Amazing, yeah, an amazing comeback. One of the great stories, I think, in recent times in rugby, in South Africa. Anyhow, that's where we are this morning. Tweet us Vote on our poll. We'd love to hear what you guys think. This is what it's about. It's Monday morning, so a lot of news for us to get into.
Former police security branch member João Rodrigues and Neville Else are scheduled to testify today to the armoured Timol inquest in the High Court in Pretoria. The trial of two men accused of forcing victim Mhlachwa into a coffin in Mpumalanga last year will begin today in the High Court in Delmas. And the Police Minister Vakile Mbalula has warned young people not to trust the internet when potential employers propose opportunities over social media. And the DA has asked SAFA to establish why the Soweto Derby match, where 2 people were killed and 17 injured following a stampede, was allowed to continue. Now, those are all your headlines. And before we get there, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Elvis, Eben, you know what, when we start talking about disasters in sports and people being crushed and killed, it's some of the most painful news that we need to bring on a Monday morning.
Yeah, you know, you take your son to go watch a football match and your lives change forever after that. It's a little bit unacceptable, and some would say that we need to change the way we behave around these kind of big events, because we have a history with these kinds of issues, and it always comes back to the clubs and the organisation running the game, and there needs to be action taken.
You know what, you said it all. I mean, Eben has said it all. That's where it really is. Something needs to change, and needs to change urgently. Let's get into our sports news for the day.
We will immediately constitute, yes, a ministerial committee of inquiry to investigate the circumstances that have led to that particular tragedy.
The Minister of Sports, Tula Singlesi, promises a ministerial commission of inquiry into the FNB Stadium disaster in which 2 fans got killed in a stampede. And the Lions mounted a sensational second-half comeback to beat the much-favoured Hurricanes by 44 points to 29 and set up a home final against 7-time champions, the Crusaders.
Quagga Smith gets the try. Game over.
And excellent work too from Dean Elgar. He's 72. He's found a partner in Bavuma.
Dean Elgar and Temba Bavuma mounted desperate red-guard action as the Proteas outplayed in all departments. Tito on the brink of a crushing defeat to England in the 3rd test. I will, of course, be having a focus on that stadium disaster with Evan around about 9:45, 9:50 or so. You don't want to miss that. But do stay with Elvis as he's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. Former security branch member João Rodrigues and Neville Else are scheduled to testify today at the armoured Timol inquest in the High Court in Pretoria. Rodrigues, who is now 78, and 80-year-old Else were based at the John Foster Square police station in Johannesburg when Timol was detained in 1970. According to the evidence thus far, Rodrigues was in a 10th floor office when Timol fell to his death. The inquest is trying to establish if Timol was pushed. Former Cabinet Minister Ronnie Kasrils is expected to testify later in the week. The trial of 2 men accused of forcing victim Mhlachwa into a coffin in Mpumalanga last year will begin today in the High Court in Delmas. Theo Jackson and Willem Oosthuizen were granted bail of R1,000 each in the Middelburg Magistrates Court earlier this month after reapplying for bail. They are facing charges of kidnapping, assault with intent to do grievous bodily harm, attempted murder and possession of an illegal firearm. The incident took place near Komati Power Station on August the 17th, 2016. A video of the incident posted on YouTube showed 1 man forcing Mhlachwa into a coffin and threatening to pour petrol on him, while Mhlachwa pleaded with them to stop. The trial will continue until August the 10th. Police are investigating a case of human trafficking and kidnapping of Free State beauty Princess Mhlangu. She was lured to a trafficker's nest in Malaysia on the pretext of a beauty pageant. The 24-year-old model arrived safely back in the country last night.
She did absolutely nothing wrong. She is a genuine victim of a serious crime.
My name is Princess Mutekua Mahlangu, born and bred in Qwaqwa.
Princess Mahlangu, a 24-year-old aspiring model, allegedly lured under false pretenses by a human trafficking ring. She was rescued by a joint police operation from a hotel room in Malaysia and flown back to South Africa, where she remains in police care, as police and the Hawks investigate the crime.
The operation led to the arrest in Malaysia of a Zimbabwean suspect, and more arrests may occur here in South Africa and across the world in the coming days.
A Nigerian national was also identified as being central to the trafficking ring.
We are working with the Malaysian law enforcement because this is a big investigation. As you have heard, that it touches a lot of other girls and women from various countries.
Mahlangu was lured into the trafficking ring through a Facebook advert, inviting models around the world to Malaysia for a beauty pageant. But the modeling agency that represented Mahlangu claims she knowingly went to Malaysia even after being told that the pageant had been cancelled. Her family was flown into Johannesburg to be with her. The traumatized Mahlangu is receiving victim support. Nozintombi Mia, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The Minister of Sport and Recreation, Thulas Nxesi, will institute a Ministerial Commission of Inquiry into the cause of Saturday's stampede at the FNB Stadium here in Soweto, Johannesburg. Now, 2 football fans were killed and 17 were injured, one of them critically. The Commission's terms of reference will be determined before the end of the week.
According to eyewitnesses, supporters forced their way into the stadium outside Gate J shortly before kickoff.
People came rushing in, they started pushing and trampling on others. I had my ticket and others did not have tickets.
We will immediately constitute, a Ministerial Committee of Inquiry to investigate the circumstances that have led to that particular tragedy.
The official attendance at the off-season competition this weekend was over 87,000 spectators. Fake tickets were allegedly printed a week ago.
As government, we cannot speculate as to what transpired at Nazareth Precinct that led to the regrettable loss of life, and cannot place reliance only on media reports.
The Department of Sport is determined to get to the bottom of the matter.
The inquiry needs to test and validate whether all those laws and regulations were followed to the letter and to their spirit, and to determine whether, and as the Minister has indicated, to rule out any possible negligence on any of the responsible parties.
This is the 3rd stampede at football venues in the past 26 years. Sfiso Ramara, SABC News, Centurion.
Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe has censured his military commanders for making political pronouncements, accusing them of meddling. Analysts say that the latest comments by the 93-year-old leader are a clear indication that the ZANU-PF party and their succession battle is in full swing.
Politics shall always lead the gun, and not the gun politics.
Tensions between President Mugabe and military commanders were laid bare last Thursday at the ZANU-PF Women's League Assembly. The veteran statesman accused some military bosses of being in a hurry to see him exit State House. A statement some see as a direct attack on the Zimbabwe Defense Forces commander, Constantino Chiwenga. Chiwenga has been accused by some of supporting a faction linked to Vice President Emmerson Mnangagwa.
The military, yes, have no right, to be interfering with the political processes.
On Saturday, during a rally at his home village of Chinoy in Mashonaland West, President Mugabe again warned military commanders not to meddle, saying it was tantamount to a coup. Earlier this week, the Zimbabwean First Lady challenged her husband to name a successor.
When Mugabe lost the first round of the presidential election in March 2008 against Morgan Tsvangirai, the military went on a full public in military uniform campaign to restore Mugabe to power. So Mugabe cannot have his cake and eat it.
Last year, the Liberation War Veterans Association publicly told the 93-year-old leader that it was time to hand over the baton to Mnangagwa. The entire leadership was promptly expelled from the ruling party. Janji Chauke, SABC News.
Well, that's your news for now. The discussion today is on cannabis, which is still illegal in South Africa, but the trial of the plant gets underway to challenge the constitutionality of South Africa's cannabis laws. And that's why we're asking you this question on the poll today. Do you support the full legalization of cannabis in South Africa? So far, 227 votes in. 70% of you in South Africa and the African continent are suggesting that yes, we are supporting legalization of cannabis. 30% are saying no. Let's start that discussion with him.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Albus. Very good morning to you. Marijuana, cannabis, weed, dagga as it's known here in South Africa, whatever you call it, it's still illegal in this country. But there have been a series of developments that have the cannabis community anticipating the next legal move. The dagga couple, they once again in the courts. Actually in the courts right now to challenge the constitutionality of South Africa's cannabis laws. Now, recently a landmark judgment was passed in the Western Cape High Court by Justice Dennis Davis, who handed down a judgment declaring sections of the Drugs and Drug Trafficking Act invalid and unconstitutional, meaning that smokers have the right to privacy when lighting one up in their own homes. Now, the trial gets underway in the High Court shortly, but I managed to secure an interview with the plaintiffs in the case. That's the dagga couple, Jules Stobbs and Myrtle Clark, late last week.
We are the plaintiffs. We get to start the proceedings. So our advocate, Don Mahan, will be leading the court with his opening arguments. Past that, today we don't really know what is going to happen. You know, this is up to the judge. But we have Dr. Donald Abrams from San Francisco standing by to start the evidence today.
The respondents in this case, there's quite a long list, is it?
Yeah, there is quite a long list. I think in total with our experts and their experts, I think there's 14 experts to be done in the next 19 days. So it's going to be an action-packed 3 weeks. We're ready for everything.
Myrtle, you've got local and international experts coming in to give their views. What's the expectation we have from the international experts that are coming?
Well, you know, all of our international experts have had extensive briefings with our legal team, and they are both leaders in their field. Dr. Donald Abrams' CV is 37 pages long. He's been working with the cannabis plant for many years, and he is the only person who has ever been given permission by the US government to do human trials on cannabis. So his research is sound. Professor David Nutt, who is no stranger to South Africa. He pops in and out because of his expertise with the scale of harms. Is cannabis more or less harmful than tobacco or alcohol? He also comes with an incredible list of credentials. But, you know, we mustn't forget our local experts. They are just as important as our international experts, because going forward, we need a South African solution, not an American solution.
Something that fits the needs of South Africa. A lot of support you guys have had, both in the online community. I see you've got a crowdfunding model that you guys have been working on. Tell us about that a little bit, and then the support that this trial has elicited on all media platforms, really.
Well, I think 7 years ago when all of this started, we were one of the first groups to ever start a Facebook online activism portal, and now in the last 7 years we've garnered 46,000 people on that page, so it's quite a powerful portal now.
Myrtle, cannabis can now be grown at home and smoked at home legally or within a legal framework in South Africa. That's certainly one of the first big changes. How will that contribute to the case that you are putting before the High Court?
you know, all of these victories all add up to the final picture. It's very important that we are going across all 4 platforms of use for cannabis in South Africa now, starting today in this court. So what the Western Cape High Court judgment didn't cover was the trade in cannabis and the use outside the home. It also didn't cover industrial uses of cannabis, that's commonly known as hemp.
Yeah.
So we are going to be strengthening our adult use platform as well as adding all of the other platform as in health, industrial and religious, cultural and religious use, yes.
The clinical cannabis trial kicks off on the 5th of August. It's also one of the events that's kind of been looked forward towards. Tell us a little bit about that, Jules.
Well, Myrtle hatched that plan about 7 years ago, and I can't believe she's actually about to pull it off. She's done so much work. I'm a little bit of a backseat passenger on the Clinical Cannabis Convention. I'm holding the fort in other ways, but Myrtle has been 18 hours a day putting this together. We go to the Linda Auditorium in Wits on Saturday, the 5th of August. We have got 11 keynote speakers for the day. It's an action-packed day, and we have invited the medical fraternity from all over the country to come and listen to the 21st century science of cannabis.
Myrtle, how do you expect this to propel the legalization conversation, the Clinical Cannabis Convention?
Well, this is all about sharing the experts with the public. And knowledge about cannabis has always been key. You see it over and over again. People don't know about cannabis, so they sprout forth anything that they hear from propaganda. So that is why we've targeted the health professionals community first.
Yeah.
Because those are the first people that need to really have a good, solid, grounded knowledge of cannabis.
Since the right to privacy card can now be played, Jules, you guys have a legal framework that helps people that are battling with the law in this case. How many people have you helped, and how is that process going forward?
I think since we started in 2013, we've helped over 60 people to get stays of prosecution countrywide in 5 out of the 9 high court jurisdictions in the land. We don't see any let up in any way. You say that you know, the right to smoke and use and grow in the privacy of your own home. The police would have a lot to say about that. They've actually doubled down it. There was a directive from the acting police commissioner at the time to say the law is still the law. It hasn't been ratified by the High Court, and we will keep arresting cannabis users. It is still against the law. So we've still got a great deal of work to do.
Talking about that work, this case of yours, this is only the first step. You're probably going to, if you're successful, you're probably going to have to go to the Supreme Court of Appeal and probably end up in the Constitutional Court at some point in the next couple of years. Do you have that timeline that you are looking at?
Yes, we do. And, Eben, this is a constitutional hearing. The High Court is going to rule on the constitutionality of the case. So the Supreme Court of Appeal is not involved. If this case is appealed, and I'm sure that it will be, it is appealed straight to the Constitutional Court. And that is the same thing that is happening in the Western Cape. The Acton and Prince case is being appealed by the state, and that appeal will be heard by the Constitutional Court. So thankfully, we don't have to go via Bloemfontein, but it's very important to get that right. It would have been a great stumbling block if we would have had to go via the Supreme Court of Appeal.
Jules, this will be the landmark case for the legalization of cannabis in South Africa in our lifetime. What do you expect the conversation to be like around cannabis after this case?
What we're trying to do with the trial of the plant is to make the future legislature realise that cannabis isn't as harmful to us or society than alcohol. Because if you have got some regulations in place for alcohol and tobacco, we are looking for the same kind of regulations for for cannabis. But because cannabis is less harmful to individuals or society than alcohol, we don't want it to be legislated any more punitively than alcohol. You cannot, because it is not as harmful to society. So the whole point of the trial of the plant is to tell the whole of the world the relative harms of this plant within society, because at the moment, everybody thinks it's an evil, evil drug, and we're about to prove all of that wrong.
What would be a win or a win-win?
A win-win is if our parliament, our government, our legislature stands up listens to what is going on in court, and take note, and not to go backwards when we get to be changing the law.
It's not legal until the guy that sells a matchbox at the BP can sell a matchbox of weed at the BP. That's when it's legal, and we will fight tooth and nail until the day that happens.
Now, that was an interview that I recorded late last week with a Dutch couple. They are in the High Court right now, kicking off the trial of the plant. It will last until the 25th of August. We'll give you periodic updates in the next couple of weeks as to what is happening within the court. Meanwhile, you can vote on our poll. We're asking you, do you support the full legalization of cannabis? To give us a complete picture of what's happening here with this conversation. 243 votes in, more than 70% say yes, we support the full legalization of cannabis in South Africa. What are you guys tweeting us? Yeah, a couple of tweets coming through as well. Let's have a look. Grant Stanley tweets us. He says, Newsroom, they should at least look at harvesting it for manufacturing of clothing, furniture, healthy oils. I support job creation. Yes, at the convention, Grant, I'm sure this will be the discussion as to how do you monetize this for the benefit of all South Africans. Ngutalo says a simple no. This one from the SANCWG says, Newsroom, long overdue that South Africa face the facts about cannabis, the trial of the plant, and joins the fastest growing agribusiness in the world. I think that's what it is. The fastest growing agribusiness in the world. We are an agricultural nation, aren't we? Now, let's take a look at our picture of the day. This one comes from Refill, and who talks about the Stampede. Yes, sportsmanship aside, 2 people died in a stampede during the game at FNB Stadium. Why was the game not stopped? It's a fair question. It's a discussion that I'll have with Kendall a little bit later as well. Now for our comment of the day. This one comes from Jay Null. He says, this dampens what could have been the best weekend for soccer lovers. Condolences to the family, friends and the soccer fraternity. And that we extend here from ourselves at SABC News to all of those affected by the latest stadium disaster here in South Africa. We go to the courts now, and this is what you can have a look at in the courts here in South Africa. Of course, in the High Court in Pretoria, 2 former apartheid-era police security branch members, they're expected to testify at the Ahmed Timol inquest. Then, in Mpumalanga, close to 200 illegal minors are expected to appear at the Evander Magistrates Court. The suspects, aged between 16 and 68, were arrested in informal settlements around Evander, as well as areas near Secunda and Newcastle in the past 10 days. 2 unlicensed firearms and stolen goods suspected to have been taken from surrounding mines were also found. Now, down in Cape Town, police have made a number of arrests in Delft and Mfuleni on the Cape Flats this weekend as part of their clampdown on illegal firearms and ammunition. 2 19-year-olds and 5 others are expected to appear in various local magistrates' courts for the illegal possession of an imitation firearm, 32 live 9mm rounds and a pellet gun respectively. We'll keep you updated on these developments in all of these cases. Now, let's just look forward to tomorrow quickly. Yeah, it's something that's not going away in our schools. Racism in our schools. They say recent racist incident. It's in Johns College where now former geography teacher Keith Arlo was found guilty of making derogatory remarks about Black, Indian and Greek students. There were also a couple of other incidents at schools around the country. Now, after the break, he's in Cape Town. Gareth Prince is standing by there. I think we've got a picture of Gareth. He's sitting by, waiting for us. We'll talk about the trial of the plant. There he is. He'll be with us after this break, talking about the trial of the plant and also what's happening with their action with regards to, well, personal use of marijuana.
We live with this threat of violence. This is a strange and weird thing. if you come to think of it. So we don't live in a society, which is where the question leads. We want to live in a society where we trust that we will not be violated.
A man abducted her from a taxi rank in Baragwanath.
He would have taken me and killed me. He would have shot me while I was running, you know. But none of those things happened. And, you know, even if I didn't believe in God, like, this is a real miracle.
How does the police unit of family violence follow new crime trends?
Station crime intelligence will from time to time present the crime pattern analysis and the crime threat analysis. We respond to those.
For all investigative insights, stay tuned to Special Assignment every Saturday at 17:30.
Welcome back. You're with Newsroom here on SABC News. Now, South Africa continues to face challenges with our drug control policies, especially with regards to marijuana. However, recently there have been several developments in this fight to make cannabis legal. Even the Medicines Control Council here in South Africa is developing guidelines for the production of cannabis now for medical use. And, of course, thanks to Rastafarian lawyer and activist Gareth Prince, in his litigation along with the Dagga Party, users can now smoke and grow their own in their own homes. But to talk us through the trial of the plant and their own litigation, we are joined from Cape Town by our Rastafarian lawyer and activist Gareth Prince. A very good morning to you, Gareth. Thanks for making the interview with us today.
Best greetings, and I'm glad to be here.
Gareth, just give us a quick overview, the sort of legal framework that we're seeing with regards to the trial of the plant and the Dagga couple's litigation against 7 government departments. Why is this so constitutionally so significant?
Well, it's quite important because it involves constitutional rights of South Africans. And not just of South African human beings, but it involves the constitutional rights of the cannabis plant. Now, these are the very issues that we, in our papers, raised before the Western Cape High Court. But unfortunately, the judicial culture in South Africa is one of minimalism. That means that whereas the Dagga couple might attempt to put all of these issues in front of the High Court, the court is not obliged to decide on these issues, because minimalism determines that if the court can reach a constitutional decision on one particular aspect, like they did in the Western Cape High Court, where they only found on privacy, then the court is, by full means, entitled to do that. But what the Dagga couple is attempting to do is to build up a record that would have to be put before the Constitutional Court eventually, when this matter has to be confirmed. But it is very important that these issues be raised so as to bring clarity amongst the people of South Africa. What we should mention is that the freedom of cannabis is not dependent upon how many people vote for it, because this is an issue of choice. And just like we had with the death penalty or with homosexuals, the fact that the majority of South African people might be against it does not mean that, therefore, these groups of people must be simply obliterated or just rejected within our society.
Now, Gareth, we see lots of experts, even international experts, coming in to give evidence in this trial. It's going to last for the next 3 to almost 4 weeks in the High Court. What do you think the kind of arguments and testimonies the Dagga couple will be bringing to the court to convince judges to send this through to the Constitutional Court?
Well, they would probably have to argue more or less along the same lines as we did, saying that several constitutional rights are being violated. Now, we argued that the cannabis legislation as it presently stands, it violates civil and political rights, it violates socio-economic rights, and it violates environmental rights. Now, strangely enough, we have a situation where the Department of Justice have argued that plants and trees do not have rights in South Africa. They say that the Bill of Rights only apply to human beings. Now, that is a very limited understanding of what our Bill of Rights is about, and that is most definitely not the best of the jurisprudence that we have developed thus far in our country. So the Dagga couple, in essence, they are trying to put before court it's in essence an equality argument, that there is absolutely no legal or rational basis why we should distinguish between alcohol, tobacco, and cannabis. They should all be subjected to the same regime.
Gareth, just give us a quick update on your case. Let's move away from this, the trial of the plant, but your case, your litigation along with the Dagga party in South Africa. What is happening? What is happening there now, and what are your hopes for the outcomes?
Well, South African law determines that any finding of unconstitutionality made by a high court is of no effect unless that decision is confirmed by the highest court in South Africa, which is the Constitutional Court. So we have now applied to the Constitutional Court for confirmation of the Western Cape High Court decision, and we are still awaiting directions from the Chief Justice in this regard. And it's, unfortunately, the wheels of justice grinds slowly but surely. I know about the slow part, I'm not so sure about the sure part. But the reality is that whilst the government and the courts are dragging their feet, people are still being arrested because our police department doesn't seem to respect the Constitutional Bill of Rights, and they don't seem to respect the full finding of the Western Cape High Court that they are acting in violation of people's rights. They are still arresting people left, right, and center. I just got arrested last week. Even though I informed all of these police officers as to what is the legal positions, they just simply told me, Mr. Prince, it is still illegal and you're going to jail. Now the fact that police officers are still treating us as if we are living in a police state is regrettable, because South Africa is a constitutional democracy. And the fact that people don't like me for smoking Dagga, that's too bad, because tolerance does not require acceptance. You have to endure me, just like you have to endure others that you do not like or agree with. That is the law within South Africa.
Absolutely. There's also the religious element to it. But I want to move away from that and conclude our conversation by talking about the way forward. How do you view this process from now until the full legalization of marijuana here in South Africa? How long do you think is it going to take, and what will that process look like for the next couple of years?
You know, ironically, the Rastafari community does not support the full legalization of cannabis, because what that means in practice is that cannabis, or the right to plant it, or the right for this plant to be used as the poverty alleviator of South Africans, is going to be taken away from us, because those with land and money are the ones that are going to be at the forefront of cultivating it. So what we envisage is a situation where government will control the growth, every aspect of this chain, until we come to a stage where South Africa as a society is ready for the freedom of cannabis, because with freedom comes responsibility. And we are not just saying that we simply want a situation where everybody on the street will start smoking willy-nilly. That is most definitely not what we want. But we want the attention to move away from the fact that people simply use cannabis to get high, and we want the conversation to start focusing on the fact that in cannabis, we have a resource that would be able to provide within most of South Africans' basic need, and that there is an urgent duty on government to make sure that we investigate all of these claims, and that we need to approach the issue of cannabis with reason and not with emotion. So currently, I mean, we are hoping, well, ultimately, we know that we will get confirmation of the Western Cape High Court decision, because the fact that constitutional rights are being violated is beyond reason. And that is what a unanimous Western Cape High Court did find. And we hope that the record will further be developed in this case of the Dagga couple in the Western, in Pretoria, so that once this matter reaches the Constitutional Court level, that the court, they themselves, will be able to write a judgment in terms of which they would be really able to give substantive content to the constitutional rights that are being challenged as being violated.
Gareth, thank you for joining us today. That's Gareth Prince. Gareth Prince is a lawyer and a cannabis activist. He's currently, he's part of the litigation process that's now made it, legal to grow and consume cannabis in a private dwelling. That's in your own home. Of course, the trial of the plant is underway. Let's just take a quick look at our poll before we take a look at the newspapers. Our poll, you guys are tweeting us and voting on our poll. We've got the question, of course, do you support the full legalization of cannabis? 72% out of 272 votes. That's a vast majority are saying yes, it's time to legalize the cannabis plant. Let's take a look now at the front pages from around the world. These are some of the other stories that stands out. This one in Miami, the Herald there reports that deadly violence marked a likely attended vote Sunday to elect an all-powerful new legislative body in Venezuela as government forces blocked opponents from protesting across the South American country. Then in the UK, The Guardian says senior Conservative MPs are urging members of Theresa May's cabinet to stop publicly setting out their demands for a transitional deal on Brexit, saying the move could make negotiations with the European Union a little bit more difficult. Then down under, The Australian reports that 3 men have pleaded guilty to plotting a terrorist attack on government buildings and police headquarters in Sydney. You're watching Newsroom. When we come back, Elvis will be doing an interview with House of Hemp to take the discussion around cannabis and the legalization process a little bit forward.
What guides us? Is it something you can see?
We need deliverance from sin, because God never
Hear?
carry on working to spread the message
Feel?
to the whole world.
Or touch? What leads us onto greater experiences? Is it the words of our sacred texts? The advice of our elders? Or is it the actions of our people? The strength of our beliefs? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people, and your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
Well, we're asking you this morning, of course, do you support the legalization of cannabis in this country? But not to be confused with dacha. Hemp is a non-psychoactive plant that offers great health and economic benefits and is being cultivated and processed right here in South Africa. The House of Hemp is a 40,000 square meter facility and is home to a glass greenhouse with specifically regulated temperatures, refrigerated backhouses and laboratories. Now, this is the most eco-friendly high-tech facility in South Africa, in Africa for that matter, and the first private company to be awarded an exclusive permit from government to grow and produce hemp products. Now, they have been cultivating cannabis for medical research for a while now. Joining us in studio is the founder of the House of Hemp, Dr. Thandeka Ruth Kunene. A very good morning to you and welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Now, we're asking our viewers this morning whether or not they support the legalization of cannabis. Now, before we get to hemp, what do you think about that?
Well, I am a Rastafari. Therefore, I do support the legalization of cannabis. And I also support what Prince Gareth was saying. We're actually pushing for legalization of cannabis equitably. which means we need to set aside some of it for those who've been working cannabis for 4,000 years which means we're pushing for cannabis to be legalized, but our people, which means the indigenous people of South Africa who have cannabis in its customs, to be given a first chance at commercializing cannabis.
What attracted you to such an uncommon venture, really, and why the focus on hemp?
Look, obviously, I was always a law-abiding citizen, and I didn't want to target a cannabis trade like that. I believed in cannabis, and I met what would be called a regular tsotsi, who said to me, cannabis can make clothes and oil in Soweto. I thought, oh, why not? I started asking everybody I knew, get me something hemp. And I started collecting. Actually, it was true what that tsotsi was saying. Hemp has got 25,000 different products. And I thought I'll find a way to make hemp become a way of removing poverty in the rural areas without fighting with government. So hemp was the way to go because government was very sensitive to cannabis per se, and they were not willing to listen at that time. I think it was because we inherited a state that had been unjust to cannabis, and as a country we had agreed to stick to international laws. So I understood what the black government was saying, but I was going to find a solution to poverty, and I believe that cannabis, industrial cannabis in particular, which is hemp, would help us with that.
How is it going to help us? What sort of products are you envisaging that can make a difference in people's lives and, of course, create a community that can benefit from hemp?
Look, first of all, hemp is, and cannabis is labor intensive in terms of cultivation. We're looking at outdoors, we're looking at least 5 to 10 people per hectare. And in South Africa, we've got a facility that is owned by the ITC that can process hemp. It's a state-of-the-art facility. If we just process one shift, that's 25,000 jobs who are working as farmers. Then you have the extractors who extract the fiber. And then while you're looking at the fiber, then there's the oil, because when you harvest the fiber, you harvest the oil as well, the seeds, and you get the oil. And then we found, right at the end of the research, we found that there was something called CBD, which is the medicine, which is the other part of THC, THC being the nice stuff that makes you high, and CBD being the mellow stuff, but both of them are medicines, and that's where we found that's where the economic viability is. Creates a lot of jobs and a lot of SMMEs.
Now, there were protests, recent protests outside the Dubai trade port. The cannabis community wants to know how you were able to execute a plan and get the particular permit, and not others that were in the business for so many years.
Well, first of all, there's a lot of misunderstanding about that permit. It was a research permit. We offered government to use our facility when they needed to do a verification study. Government, up to now, had been the one that is trying to find how hemp would perform in South Africa, because at first they were using exotic hemp seeds, because people were saying in South Africa we've got dagga, and they were scared of dagga. So government took a decision. It wasn't me, but I just followed the law. And when government had finished their research, which showed that hemp was viable, hemp could create jobs, hemp actually had an economic part, which is the medicine, they needed what is called a verification study to look at the statistical significance of the scientific results. So we, meaning House of Hemp with ARC, because we had passed the season, that was end of 2015, we offered them our facility for them to do their verification study and to explore this new animal called CBD, which seemed like it was going to make so much money.
Now, while cannabis is still illegal in the country, how did you get it right to actually start cultivating?
As I said, it was a research permit. We were looking at statistical significance of stability of THC, and we were looking at this extra compound called CBD, which had a lot of money. So we thought, if we could understand the animal called CBD, maybe we could take it to the communities and let the communities plant tall fiber hemp plants with a head of CBD. And fiber, we're looking at something like 20 rand a kilo. Oil, we're looking 200 rand a kilo. CBD, you're looking anything between $7,000 and $10,000 a kilo. So for me, I was very excited that our government was willing to legalize hemp, and allow the people in the rural areas to grow the hemp CBD, which is the medicine.
In conclusion, the Dagga couple, they back in court now today, challenging the government to legalize cannabis for medical and recreational purposes. Did you envision perhaps a process where we are now at this point where cannabis can be legalized in order to assist you with your production in hemp?
Definitely. It's long overdue. Cannabis is a plant from God. Actually, the laws that were against cannabis were colonial, racist laws. Africans in the whole of Africa have never shunned down on cannabis. It's time. The only challenge for South Africa is whether cannabis is going to benefit the people, the majority of the people of South Africa. All people of the world have got some link to cannabis. So that's why we wish the Dagga couple well, we wish South Africa well, and we wish South Africa could be the leader, global leader in cannabis. And I, as one of the pioneers, I want to be there. I want to lead the global cannabis, and South Africa must dominate cannabis internationally.
Doctor, I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having us.
That was the founder of
so
House of Hemp, Dr. Thandeka Ruth Kunene. It's now time to take a look at Sport Focus and, of course, the tragedy that struck over the weekend. Let's go over to Eben and Kendall.
Yeah, thanks, Elvis. It was another sad weekend. 2 soccer fans lost their lives in a stampede at FNB Stadium in the Soweto derby between Chiefs and Pirates. Now, 17 people are also reported to be injured, with 1 to be in a critical condition. Now, I've got Kendall here with me, and a lot's been said about this issue. I understand there's an 11 o'clock press conference that's going to at the PSL offices. We will take that press conference live on this very channel, on this very show at 11 o'clock this morning, if they start on time. We're all waiting for the outcomes of this, but in the meantime, a lot of speculation, a lot of finger pointing is going on.
You know, it's undoubted. It would exactly come down to that, who's to blame and so on and so forth. The big story, though, is that 2 fans have lost their lives. You know what? We've been talking for the longest time about how our stadiums are empty. Nobody goes to stadiums. Yeah. And come Soweto Derby, what happens? We get 80,000 people that throng, that fill up the FNB Stadium. Well, you know what that means to me, Eben? That means to me that 2 of the fans that got crushed are possibly 2 fans that were only going for the derby, and not your day-to-day fan who goes to the stadium. Could have been anybody. Could have been you. Could have been me.
Yeah, that's the sad thing is that we've got a history with this kind of thing, and the inquest that we've had in the past has proven to one thing: cutting costs on security and on staff minding big events always ends up in tragedy.
100%. We saw that when the Pirates was involved in the Stampede. Well, the pitch invasion against Sundowns, and then again against Bloem Celtic. Not much has come of it. It's been 7 odd months. Not much has come of it. We don't know what's... And I do think it's high time that the authorities took this in hand.
Yeah. Is there the appetite, though, to deal with these kinds of issues? Because there doesn't seem to be. The people that are sending me messages on Facebook are telling me things like, I was at the game, and the whole of Nazareth Road was covered in ticket scalpers selling fake tickets, and the police and the security turned a blind eye to that.
I think the appetite is going to have to happen. We are trending all over the world. South Africa currently is trending for the wrong reason again. It's trending for a stampede where 2 fans got killed at a former World Cup venue, our biggest World Cup venue.
The biggest World Cup venue, the pride of our nation, mind you. Yep. Now, the question of the day is on screen there. Could this stadium disaster have been handled better? What do you say?
Definitely would want to see what's been said by our viewers, but I know it could have been handled better. They could have gotten the right security in. You can put the numbers in, but they need to be trained to manage fans at an event.
There's also talk about corruption at the turnstiles, people paying their way in and bribing ticket minders to let them in and all that kind of thing. It's going to be a very difficult thing, I think, for us to keep a lid on, Kendall, but we're going to leave it there. We'll take this press conference at 11 o'clock. Don't forget to go and give us your views on our social media pages. If you were there, give us an eyewitness account. Some people have even been sending me how we should manage football going forward. And some of it, I must say, is really on point. But we've run out of time. We're going to do that more. Let's go to Phil now. He's standing by to give us your Monday weather.
Yeah, thank you so much. Very good morning and welcome to the Weather Desk. Let's take a look at what's happening. We're going to start off on the eastern coastlines of Africa here, the southern hemisphere of Africa at least. A lot of rainfall forecast. Most of it's only isolated showers, but that does extend all the way throughout the eastern coastlines there. What that's the result of is low pressure systems, a series of them along that eastern coastline. But also we have a high pressure system now off South Africa's southeastern coast. Of course, that's in behind that low, and of course the past low resulted in quite a bit of rainfall towards the eastern coastline. For today, we're seeing that rainfall dissipating. It's only morning rainfall that should already have started dying out towards that eastern coastline. Depending on where you are, might take quite a bit of time to to become a drier day there. But moving on into tomorrow, we can see a low pressure system starts to come towards that southwestern coastline of South Africa. Now, South Africa is windy both today and tomorrow, particularly in these southwestern areas where we're seeing up to a 50-kilometre-per-hour steady wind throughout the day there. We're also seeing conditions which are highly conducive to the spread of veldfires over South Africa's western areas. And of course, this is something you're going to have to watch out for today as we move into tomorrow and we see a bit more rainfall there. It's not going to be such a priority. Let's take a look at what's going on in a little bit more detail now. Cape Town, 28 degrees Celsius. It's going to be a stunning day there in Cape Town today, but later this afternoon and into this evening, we're expecting the possibility of some isolated showers coming into the area as well. Pretoria, 22 degrees. Johannesburg is at 21 degrees for today. Moving on into the neighbouring states, well, we see Mountain Peaks at 27 degrees, another hot one, and nothing we're not surprised about there. 22 degrees, Windhoek and Harare sharing that same high. And as we said, along the coastlines, the eastern coastlines, there are isolated showers for most areas. Now, Moroni peaks at 26 degrees, Victoria 28, Port Louis 26, and Antananarivo 23. All of these areas expecting a dry one for today. It's going to be a stunning day in most of those regions, some of them a little bit windy. Now, Dar es Salaam's at 29 degrees. Areas north of this expecting a bit of rainfall. Bangui, Kinshasa, Kigali, all of these areas expecting showers and thunder showers with temperatures, for the most part, between about 23 and 31 degrees Celsius in this region. Moving north, we're going to see warmer temperatures, but we're also going to see quite a lot more rainfall. Take a look at this. Rainfall extending through the Central African Republic's northern border regions there, on into Chad, and of course, even moving on into Sudan. So it's going to be quite a wet one there all the way throughout that entire area. Ethiopian highlands expecting about a 60% chance of showers for today. As we move from today into tomorrow, take a look there around Mali. Southern Mali starts to get quite a strong band of showers and thunder showers. A strong pressure cell there is causing that, and that's expected into tomorrow. You can see a lot of that rainfall in the central regions has started to dissipate. Central African Republic and of course the southern parts of Chad now only expecting isolated showers. This is where we're going to leave your weather for now. Stay tuned.
What guides us? What leads us forward? Is it the words of our sacred texts? Is it the actions of our people? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people, and your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
We're talking news, business, and sporting updates both continentally and abroad. South Africa is in its first economic recession since 2009.
Currency has appreciated quite a lot, especially for this year. And it has benefited from a number of things, not so much to do with what was happening here at home.
The Islamic State-linked news agency AMAC claims the latest attack was launched because of Australia's backing in the US fight against the group.
Constad is one of the dozens of women who have accused Cosby of sexual assault, but hers is the only case recent enough to be subjected to criminal prosecution.
Stay tuned to News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
Yeah, welcome back. It's just gone 10 o'clock. Central African time, myself and Kendall, we are with you from now until, well, 11 o'clock this morning, bringing you all the best from the world of well, sport and news. And today, there's an interesting case before the High Court.
100%. We had a very interesting guest in studio who's talking about taking it all the way and making it universal that South Africa be the leader. Cannabis is still illegal in South Africa, but the trial of the plant gets underway today. And we want to find out from you, what do you think? Do you support the legislation of cannabis in South Africa, the full legalization of it?
Nearly 300 votes in now. Almost 3/4 of our viewers are saying, yes, we support it. It's about time we should do this kind of thing. Keep tweeting us and keep voting on this poll. Let's just have a look at a couple of your tweets with regards to this question. As the trial of the plant is underway now, it's streaming live. Search for it. You'll be able to watch it live on wherever. Mike tweets us. He says, free up your mind and soul. Everyone is doing it now, so why not legalize, says Mike.
Mystic Man says, me have problem with that burning smoke and smell. Terrible headaches and impaired vision. They can boil it to cook or even eat it as it is.
That's what people are doing, Mystic Man. It's actually medicine. You know, there's various ways of taking it. Proudly Koi says to us, Daka is a natural weed in South Africa and was proudly smoked by the Khoi before the white settlers came to impose their laws on us.
Just like Dr. Ruth Kunene just said right now, Thandeka Ruth Kunene said exactly the same thing.
Yep. In all African, well, I can't say all, but in many African tradition, the cannabis plant is a part of a spiritual process and should be respected as such. Anyhow, the sad news for us here on a Monday is that we seem to be always coming back to the same thing with regards to our stadium scenarios. More lives were lost, Kendall.
It's been bubbling under for some time now. We saw some pitch invasions in this last season that were not dealt with, at least not conclusively. You know what? Here we are now, talking about 2 people dying at a football match.
11 o'clock, there'll be a press conference at the PSL offices giving us an update on the stadium disaster scenario. So we'll take that live at 11. Don't miss it. But you guys are tweeting us. Of course, everyone has a view and everyone has an answer today. After the fact, some would say. Interesting what Alex tells us.
He says the problem comes from supporters who came to the stadium late and they want to go in as they wish.
Some people say they paid bribes to ticket holders, or ticket holders were sent in without even clipping their tickets, and those tickets came back and were resold to re-enter and so forth. Scary stuff that's gone on. They talk about scalpers selling fake tickets outside with impunity, with no one even batting an eyelid. Are there more tweets on this? Is there another tweet?
Should keep them coming.
There we go.
Because Mystic Man has also got an opinion on this. Says stop buying tickets in bulk and selling them at the entrance with double the price. Detain these people. We knew a week before the game that tickets will be sold there.
Yeah, it was sold out. The game was sold out a week ago. So with impunity, ticket scalpers were operating in Nasrec Road before the game, and therein lies the problem. IG tells us, Newsroom, I blame fans. How can you go to a stadium knowing you have a fake ticket? Some people don't know it was a fake ticket, mind you. Some people thought they bought a legal ticket, as it were. I think there should only be one way to get your hand on a ticket, and the accreditation process, especially for the big matches,
100%. But if you're buying a ticket on the side of the road, what do you expect?
Yep, but the thing is not about the person buying the ticket. You should not be allowed by the authorities to sell tickets next to a stadium. You should be locked up if you're selling tickets to people. So that's how it works everywhere else in the world. Anyhow, the Lions did us proud there. They won a big knockout game against a serious team.
And you know what? You need to remember that they were trailing 22-10 at halftime. So nobody comes back against the Kiwi side, trailing at halftime and beat them 49.
What are you guys saying? That I say that Lions ran them off their feet. It was the first time that I saw a Kiwi side out on their feet in the second half of the game. They had nothing left in the tank to come back. That's why the Lions, just the last 10 minutes, were all over them. Nazim tweets us, he says, that was an amazing comeback from the Lions team. They played the final before the final.
Let's hope not.
Well, Nati looks like he's a New Zealand supporter to us.
Yes, yeah, he does, eh? Proudly Koi says, what a game. I just love the comeback. Make the Lions Springboks. They will win next week.
Maak die bulle almal bokke. That sounds a lot like that.
Oh, yes.
Mystic Man says, do not underestimate the slow movement of the big cat. It's calculating its accuracy. I go with lions. Lion rolls all the way. Yeah.
Well said, Mystic Man.
Yeah, of course. Go to the stadium this week. It will be a great occasion at Ellis Park. And it would be nice to have a packed house, wouldn't it?
100%. And I think, you know, a lot can be said in terms of like the fans' experience at the rugby match and the fans' experience at football matches.
Are we going to talk a little bit about the empty stadiums at these big games this week and how it plays out? How you can't have the same security for an empty stadium as a full stadium.
We need to do that. I think this is going to be going on the entire week, and I think we need to have that chat.
We'll have that chat, myself and Kendall, a little bit later in the week about why are the stadiums empty at some of these big matches, what is happening. Are we losing our appetite for Super Rugby, by the way? It'll be interesting to see how that develops. Anyhow, let's take a look at our top stories at this hour right now. Former police security branch members João Rodrigues and Neville Else are scheduled to testify shortly at the Ahmed Timol inquest in the High Court in Pretoria. Police Minister Vigi Lambalula has warned young people not to trust the internet when potential employers propose opportunities over social media platforms. And the Democratic Alliance has asked SAFA to establish why the Soweto Derby match, where 2 people were killed and 17 injured following a stampede, was allowed to continue. Those are your top stories at this hour. Let's go over to Kendall for the sports update.
Of course, we'll be crossing live at 11 o'clock. Should they be ready to the PSL offices where a press conference will be held exactly about that. Speaking of which, good morning to you. This is our top story for today in the sports.
We will immediately constitute, yes, a ministerial committee of inquiry to investigate the circumstances that have led to that particular tragedy.
The Minister of Sports, Tula Sinesi, promises a Ministerial Commission of Inquiry into the FNB Stadium disaster in which 2 fans got killed in a stampede. And the Lions mount a sensational second-half comeback to beat the much-favoured Hurricanes by 44 points to 29 and set up a home final against 7-time champions, the Crusaders.
Walker Smith gets the try. Game over.
And excellent work too from Dean Elgar. He's 72. He's found a partner in Bavuma.
Dean Elgar and Tim Babavu mounted desperate rearguard action as the Proteas outplayed in all departments. Tito on the brink of a crushing defeat to England in the 3rd test. All this and more we've got for you later on at 10:40. Do stay with Eben though, as he's got the news.
Yeah, thanks, Kendall. This is our top story right now. Former police security branch members João Rodrigues and Neville Else are scheduled to testify shortly at the Ahmed Timol inquest in the High Court in Pretoria. Rodrigues, who is now 78, and 80-year-old Else were based at the John Foster Square police station in Johannesburg when Timol was detained in the 1970s. According to evidence thus far, Rodrigues was in a 10th floor office when Timol fell to his death. The inquest is trying to establish if Timol was pushed. Former Cabinet Minister Ronnie Kasrils is expected to testify a little bit later this week. The trial of 2 men accused of forcing victim Dlotshwa into a coffin in Mpumalanga last year will begin today in the High Court in Delmas. Theo Jackson and Willem Oosthuizen were granted bail of R1,000 each in the Middelburg Magistrates Court earlier this month after reapplying for bail. They are facing charges of kidnapping, assault with the intent to do grievous bodily harm, attempted murder and possession of an illegal firearm. The incident took place near Kamati Power Station on August 17, 2016. A video of the incident posted on YouTube showed one man forcing Dlotshwa into a coffin and threatening to pour petrol on him while Dlotshwa pleaded with him to stop. The trial will continue until August 10th. Now, police are investigating a case of human trafficking and kidnapping of Free State beauty Princess Mahlangu. She was lured to a trafficker's nest in Malaysia on the pretext of a beauty pageant. The 24-year-old model arrived safely back in the country last night.
Did absolutely nothing wrong. She is a genuine victim of a serious crime.
My name is Princess Mutekua Mahlangu, born and bred in Qwaqwa.
Princess Mahlangu, a 24-year-old aspiring model, allegedly lured under false pretenses by a human trafficking ring. She was rescued by a joint police operation from a hotel room in Malaysia and flown back to South Africa, where she remains in police care, as police and the Hawks investigate the crime.
The operation led to the arrest in Malaysia of a Zimbabwean suspect, and more arrests may occur here in South Africa and across the world in the coming days.
A Nigerian national was also identified as being central to the trafficking ring.
We are working with the Malaysian law enforcement because this is a big investigation, as you have heard, that it touches a lot of other girls and women from various countries.
Mahlangu was lured into the trafficking ring through a Facebook advert, inviting models around the world to Malaysia for a beauty pageant. But the modeling agency that represented Mahlangu claims she knowingly went to Malaysia even after being told that the pageant had been cancelled. Her family was flown into Johannesburg to be with her. The traumatized Mahlangu is receiving victim support. Nozintombi Mia, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now let's continue our discussion of the day. That's around the legalization of cannabis for medical and recreational purposes in South Africa. Now, for the first time, the country will be hosting a clinical cannabis convention where local and international experts will be there to discuss the pros and cons, as well as the latest research about this plant being used for medical purposes. International studies already suggest, and in some cases have proven, that hemp and cannabis products helps to reduce pain, anxiety, mood disorders, insomnia, and quite a few others. This convention comes at a time when the country sees a number of legal developments towards the legalization of the plant taking place. Now, you can listen in to these discussions at the Linda Auditorium at the University of the Witwatersrand from this Saturday, the 5th of August. It starts at 9 a.m. and it lasts until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, joining us in studio is one of the guest speakers at the convention, biologist and professional gardener, Arne Verhoef. Arne, good morning. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, thank you so much.
I'm going to take you outside of your field of expertise. I just want to deal quickly with the trial of the plant that's in the High Court today. Just give us a quick overview as a gardener, as an expert. How do you view the trial of the plant, and what do you expect it to do for the cannabis conversation?
Look, this has been a few years in the making. The Dagga couple have had to take the South African government, 7 departments, to court to free a plant. It is as simple as that. The government is waging a war on the plant. Fortunately, we do have international experts that they've flown over, collected from all over the world to say that, hey, this is just a plant. It's time to set it free.
Tell us about the clinical cannabis convention starting at the weekend, and there'll be a host of international stakeholders taking place. What's your expectation of the event?
I personally am very excited about that. It would be the first of its kind in South Africa at the very least. It will deal all about the plant and the therapeutic benefits it can provide. Currently, there's about 700 disorders and diseases that it can at least assist with. And hopefully in this convention, we can educate doctors and the general public about the benefits of dosing with this plant.
Does cannabis cure cancer? There's a lot of conjecture around it.
That, I can't say yes. It provides a lot of therapeutic benefit to cancer sufferers, and anecdotal evidence suggests that it is indeed able to cure some forms of cancer.
Tell me about stigma, because cannabis battles with stigma in South Africa, and we can argue about why it has stigma. How will the convention help to overcome issues of stigma that continues to haunt cannabis?
I think for the last few decades, unnecessary stigmas have been placed on the plant and its users. It was very normal before prohibition to either use it medically or even recreationally. Hopefully, it will make people see that this is a pretty harmless plant whose benefits far outweigh any negatives associated with it.
Of course, in the end, anything that is abused will become problematic. Let's talk about yourself, because you have a lot of experience growing the plant. You've worked overseas, you worked in Holland. I see that on your bio, you worked in Holland and you've come back. And you believe that the cannabis plant will shape the 21st century agriculture. Tell us about that point of view.
A lot of people seemingly still think that cannabis is for smoking, it's just for getting high. Not at all. Thousands upon thousands of products can be made from a carbon negative, environmentally friendly resource, such as cannabis. Industrial cannabis, which is generally referred to as hemp, is able to build batteries, to build houses, to build batteries, to build cars, to make our clothes and paper. They're 3D printing with the plant fibers, meaning the world is our oyster. Anything that we can imagine, we can actually make with this one plant, and this in an environmentally friendly way instead of relying on petroleum products and the like.
You'll be putting forward a presentation to the convention a little bit later in the week. Tell me about what you'll be talking about when you deliver this presentation.
So I'll just be telling people about the plant, letting people to know its very long history of use, how important it's been to human civilization, all the various facets. I am personally very intimidated because this plant has so much to say about it, even though I just get half an hour slot.
You paint a very rosy picture about the economic possibilities for a country like South Africa when we talk about the cannabis plant in general. Tell us about that economic outlook that you see when we talk about real stuff. We talk about jobs, we talk about economic prospects for communities, upliftment, these kinds of things. What do you see?
The illegal crop is estimated to be worth about 10 billion rand in South Africa yearly. It is especially grown in very rural areas like the Eastern Cape, where it's been extremely difficult to empower these people. So if we can get these people on the right side of the law, actually growing this plant, we can very rapidly establish industries that can feed into the broader economy, whether that be growing pot for recreational use, or indeed teaching artisans how to build with cannabis.
Talk to me right now about, we see on screen, of course, communities, their agribusiness being destroyed by police. This is in the Eastern Cape and other areas where we see that. How many people depend on cannabis crops in South Africa, do you reckon, just for survival day to day?
I can't think of a figure. All I can say is very, very many. Seeing these scenes, I think of this one article I read just the other day about an 81-year-old grandmother who was arrested and dragged off to court for growing this plant to actually support her children and grandchildren as the only form of dependable income that she gets. Our government responds to these people trying to fend for their families by spraying them with poisons.
In conclusion, 10 years from now, where do you want to see cannabis in South Africa?
Cannabis will be a fundamental pillar to our economy, our society. So I think the best way to put it is that I see cannabis being put on a very, very high pedestal.
Arne, thank you very much for joining us. Of course, you can catch Arne and a host of international speakers at the Clinical Cannabis Convention. Kicks off at Wits here in Johannesburg, 9 o'clock on the 5th of August. That's Saturday. Don't miss it. Some of the international speakers are going to be here. You hosting one or two of them. What are they coming to tell us?
So we have Donald Abrahams. He's a cancer and integrative medicine specialist from the States. We have David Nutt, which is a very enigmatic man. He's a neuropsychopharmacologist. And they'll be focusing mainly on the clinical applications of cannabis.
Arne, thank you very much. All the best with the convention. Arne Verhoef is a biologist and a professional gardener and a man who's studied cannabis intimately, not just in South Africa, but also around the world. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Now, we're going to take a short little commercial break. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News.
What is environmental health?
In Section 24 of the Constitution, the environmental right has a second part, which is to encourage people to be active citizens and gives us the right to participate in politics and organize and raise awareness so that the environmental right can be guaranteed.
Using coal and wood and paraffin to cook with or to heat their space or to heat water. These are basic fundamentals, and I think if we can address that alone, we will make a huge impact, an environmental impact on the health of our population.
Food that comes into the country, the vigilance at the ports and harbours is being checked at the moment currently by environmental practitioners who are port officers at those ports. They need to be more stringent in terms of control of what comes into the country.
Join Health Talk every Saturday for all your health news.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News. Now, Zambian authorities, they've arrested 3 Chinese nationals and 2 locals found carrying rhino horn at the border with Mozambique. Zambia's Parks Ministry says the horns are suspected to have come here from South Africa. Meanwhile, government finally delivered the latest rhino and elephant poaching statistics after some delay, with some speculation that there had been an upsurge in poaching since the local moratorium, which banned the domestic trade in rhino horn. This, however, was overturned earlier this year. Now, we asked Bonnet de Bot if the numbers have indeed decreased.
It is a decrease, with the minister saying that 529 rhinos poached is down by 13 rhinos compared to the same time last year. I think it is positive. I mean, you know, we all like hearing about a decrease, but we must remember that, you know, if we look nationally, if we look at the numbers, I see that the press is reporting this as a positive outcome. I don't think that is the case.
Why is that not the case?
So why I'm saying that is let's look at the numbers released by the department. Okay, so if we compare the same time last year, the national figure was standing at 188 rhinos poached. If we look at the national figure now, it is standing at 286 rhinos poached. So almost more than 100 rhinos poached. Now, when we look at Kruger, the same time last year, 111 more rhinos poached. So that's fantastic news. There's a massive decrease of poaching inside Kruger Park. We've all seen the massive effort they've put into it, and we've even discussed this many times here on Newsroom. But we have to look at the national figure. If we just take out this dramatic decreased figure out of this year, then it tells us a very different story. And that is that at the same time last year, as I said, 188 rhinos poached nationally. We are now standing at 286. So that is a massive incline, an increase in rhino poaching nationally.
What could be then the contributing factor to that increase of more of 100 rhino being killed from last year then?
Well, we must look at the criminal syndicates and the tactics they use. So, of course, there are a massive security in Kruger now. So what they're doing now, Elvis, they're moving out of Kruger and targeting other provinces, like KwaZulu-Natal. KwaZulu-Natal is seeing the highest poaching numbers it's ever seen. And then also the private rhino owners. I mean, I visited a private rhino owner a couple of weeks ago in the Northern Cape. He lost 9 rhinos in one night.
Now that is scary if you think about it.
That's shocking.
So, but why 9 rhinos in one night? Didn't he have ample security? What is the situation there?
That's always the first question that gets asked and must be asked. What security was in place when a poaching takes place, especially 9 rhinos? Now, you can imagine this private rhino owner, this farmer, absolutely devastated about losing rhinos, let alone 9. And when I broached the question about his security, he admitted that he didn't have the latest high-tech security in place. He did have some security measures in place, but for him, a big factor was that his farm is massive. You know, it's thousands and thousands of hectares. So he felt pretty confident that his rhinos were safe in the middle of nowhere. Now, I also got a sense of scale of the place when we went up in the helicopter to get to these carcasses. And, you know, Elvis, I've been to many rhino crime scenes, and shame, it was very, very difficult for him to walk from the one carcass to the next. And they were literally 100 meters from each other in a big circle. He also got very emotional when he told me that 4 of the rhinos were pregnant. So he, in actual fact, lost 13 rhinos and not only 9, if you take those unborn calves into consideration.
Now, we also heard about the online auction by one of the biggest rhino owners in the country, John Hume, that he will be putting that forward. Is that perhaps a solution to the ongoing poaching of rhino that we see in the country?
I think before we get to the auction, let's talk about the domestic trade issue. You know, there's so much confusion since domestic trade has been made legal again. So much so that the department issued a statement about 2 weeks ago, and then yesterday at the press briefing, they made it very clear that international trade in rhino horn is illegal and that it is prohibited in terms of the international protocols that South Africa is party to, and that's CITES. They also state that any planned sale of rhino horn by private rhino owners is for domestic trade only. And that's important to remember. So what is important is that, yes, we can trade legally within South African borders, but as soon as rhino horn crosses the border, it is illegal. Okay, so that is the background to the domestic trade. So let's get back to the auction. This is essentially the world's first legal auction, being planned by rhino farmer John Hume. He's been on Newsroom a few times, and he's the world's largest private owner with well over 1,000 rhinos. And he said that the auction will go ahead no matter what. But this is the confusion. So, yes, it is a local auction, but this is presenting as a global auction, and it is open to bidders from all over the world, including the demand countries like China and Vietnam. But international trade is illegal, right?
Yes.
So what happens here is that under the conditions of sale, those horns will have to remain here in South Africa until global trade is unbanned. And that's very unlikely to happen, as it has been in place since 1972. 1977, excuse me. So the only way a buyer will be able to take rhino horn out is when he or she is granted an import and export permit. Now, according to the draft regulations, an import permit from the importing country must first be obtained before an export permit will even be considered by the South African government. So rather complicated, Elvis.
Yes.
But let's see what happens with the auction. I'll also be spending time with John Hume later, and I'm hoping to bring you a full in-depth report when I return next month.
So this could probably open Pandora's box for us a little bit more.
Well said.
Well, Are you optimistic about the picture that was presented by the department in moving forward with the figures, with the statistics being released?
You know, it's always good to hear that there's a decrease. But as I said, we have to look at the bigger picture. We have to put it into perspective. Very good news that came out of the press briefing is the increased cooperation between us and Southeast Asia in terms of law enforcement. The Hawks and other government representatives met with their counterparts in March, and they're really trying to tackle things together rather than working apart, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, those latest stats around Rhino poaching here in South Africa. Now, former police security branch members João Rodrigues and Neville Else, well, they're testifying at the Ahmed Timol inquest in the High Court in Pretoria right now. Let's go there live to hear what they have to say.
Near the entrance to the building, to the lift.
I would have thought you were clear on that. Did you have an office on the ninth floor?
Yes, but the exact office I cannot, how far down the passage that I cannot remember.
You knew the policeman that gave evidence last week, Paul Erasmus. He worked under you, not so.
I know the name, Erasmus, yes.
Before I'm asking you about teams that worked together when a big fish was caught at that stage, you know the term strategic communication, STRACOM.
Repeat the Afrikaans.
STRACOM, strategische communicatie, Afrikaans, strategische communicatie, STRACOM, you know that?
Yes, I would say I do.
I want to get back to the first team. At that stage, more or less 22 people were arrested in this swoop. It was a big operation, not so?
It would have been, yes.
You say it would have been. Wouldn't you have been roped in to come and help with this 22 people that had to be interrogated?
I must say that I cannot recall that even.
Let's see if we can jog your memory. Professor Knight sitting in this court, and he was interrogated on the Saturday evening. His hands got paralyzed because the helicopter method was used for his torture. And there was a psychotherapist that assisted in this specific instance, Ayekun, because his one hand was totally paralyzed and he had to get treatment for that hand for a long time. And there was allegations of torture. And you made a statement in that specific allegation that you were involved in the interrogation of Professor Knight on that Saturday evening, from Saturday evening 9 o'clock till the next morning. Is it possible?
I personally, at this stage, cannot recall it.
But is it possible? The question was...
That I was involved.
Yes, and that you did an affidavit in this allegation is about torture, that you were involved in the questioning of Professor Knight.
I may have asked him a question if I was involved. If it's in my statement, yes.
I want to understand how it would have worked. If 22 people got arrested, I presume a roster would have to be drawn up to do the questioning, because your evidence was you want that information as soon as possible, not so?
In any case, I think.
But especially in a big case like this. That would have been one. And what would happen to the detainees? Would they be held in the offices?
During interrogation?
Yes.
They would have been held wherever they were interrogated, yes.
And they would also sleep there in certain instances.
That I cannot recall, I cannot answer that.
Now, let's just test this. At that stage, this was a big scoop. A main unit of the communists, the leader of this main unit got arrested, not so?
I can't say he's the main unit or the main member of the...
Okay, let's say an important member of a communist cell got arrested, not so?
A person was arrested at that stage. I cannot say if he was important or if he was a key member. He was arrested, and that's what I can say.
Okay, and 21 other people also got arrested?
If that number is correct, yes.
And the information needed to be obtained as soon as possible from these people?
Yes.
Which people would have been involved in the interrogation of these people?
I would say people involved in that particular case and investigators doing interrogation.
22 people that were arrested, some of them must have been on the 9th floor at John Foster Square.
I cannot recall that. I cannot confirm that.
Did you see any of the detainees?
I would have, yes.
And let me test your approach here. You would have seen with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the TRC, that a number of policemen applied for amnesty regarding torture.
Yes.
Mr. Paul Erasmus gave evidence in this court that it was common practice that people were sometimes assaulted.
If he was aware of it and it happened in his presence, it could be.
But you were never aware of it and you don't know nothing about it.
I am definite on that point that I would not have assaulted or otherwise tortured a detainee.
Yes, that's not what I'm asking, whether you would do it. I'm asking whether you were aware of it.
It was in media, in press, it was knowledge available.
But from walking on the 9th floor, possibly doing a visit to the 10th floor, you've never observed anything of the sort?
In the period that I did walk in the building and where interrogation was taking place, I cannot recall seeing it or knowing about it, although it was common knowledge.
That's an interesting answer. If you say it was common knowledge that it happened.
You mentioned that it was common knowledge. Yes, it's in the press, you hear it daily.
After seeing the pamphlets at Newlands police station and seeing Mr. Ahmed Timol and Dr. Esop there, did you see them again?
I would have seen them at some stage, yes.
Where and when and in what situation?
It would have been at John Foster Square, either wherever I was and they were there at the same time, yes.
Can you describe in which situation you did see them again? Was it on the 10th floor?
I cannot describe it in detail, my lord.
What is of interest to me, your field of expertise were explosives.
Yes, that's correct.
This also related to bucket bombs.
That's correct.
Bucket bombs is not necessarily meant to kill people, but to distribute pamphlets, not so.
That's correct.
And this exactly related to this case.
Yes.
And also coded messages.
I cannot recall coded messages being involved in this case. I cannot.
You were not involved in that?
No.
But as to the bucket bomb, you would have been involved. You were the explosive expert.
If explosives were found, yes.
You said explosives were found.
No, if they were found, I would have been involved.
The allegation was that Ahmed Timol distributed communist pamphlets. Were you at any stage involved in investigating that or looking at previous pamphlets and bucket bombs?
No, but that the methods used to distribute it was, one of the methods would have been by bucket bomb with a light explosive.
Now, after looking at the pamphlets in the Anglia, the yellow Anglia, where you looked at it and handing it over to the senior officer, were you at all involved in this 22 people and the interrogation?
I cannot recall that.
Is it possible that you were involved? Is it possible that you would have been?
It's possible, but I cannot at this stage say, yes, I was involved in the investigation.
On the day Mr. Timol died, can you remember whether you were at John Foster Square?
Cannot.
Okay, you said you knew what is Stratcom. Can you explain in layman's terms to us what is Stratcom?
I wouldn't be able to explain in layman's terms, but
my lord, there's a file in regard to this specific witness that I didn't have sight of. Can I ask for a short adjournment that I can just see if I can't get this file, if there's necessary questions in regard to that? I haven't had that file yet. Can I ask for a short adjournment that I can just have a look at this file?
How long? How long?
10 minutes, my lord.
Yes. It's 10:42. We'll come back at 11.
As the court pleases. Thank you, my lord.
We adjourn.
Well, that's what's happening right there at the High Court. Now, we're going to take a short little commercial break. When you come back, we'll give you a complete sports update with Kendall Mahamati.
What guides us? Is it something you can see?
We need deliverance from sin, because God never
Hear?
carry on working to spread the message
Feel?
to the whole world.
Or touch? What leads us onto greater experiences? Is it the words of our sacred texts? The advice of our elders? Or is it the actions of our people? The strength of our beliefs? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people, and your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
Good morning and welcome back. Over the weekend, on Saturday, the 28th of July, to be exact, news broke on this channel that 2 people had gotten killed in a crush, a stampede at one of the gates in entry to the Soweto Derby out of the FNB Stadium in Johannesburg. Now, we had some of our reporters go through there to find out what it is that had gone on. We've received lots of news since then about everything that's gone on. Some people are claiming selling tickets illegally. Some people are saying fans got there late. Whatever it is, SABC managed to get an exclusive interview with the Minister of Sports, Minister Thulas Nxesi. Following the FNB Stadium stampede, the Minister confirmed to us that an impending Ministerial Commission of Inquiry would be set up. The Minister, alongside the DG for Sports, Mr. Alec Muemi, told SABC News that the terms of reference and the members of that commission would be announced to South Africa before the week's end.
As government, we have learned a lot from the then Ellis Park disaster and had implemented recommendations of the Commission of Inquiry that was appointed to deal with that particular tragedy. We have since then enacted a law to respond and implement preventative measures in such situations. Government enacted the Safety at Sports and Recreation Events Act, that's Act number 2 of 2000. And the safety of spectators and all who attend our sport and recreation events remains paramount. And we are enjoined by this law and its accompanying regulations to act in view of such unfortunate occurrences. We believe that the laws and regulations to ensure the safety of all sports and recreation events are adequate and robust enough to deal with the eventualities. As human life has been lost, and there are also injuries, we will immediately constitute, yes, a Ministerial Committee of Inquiry to investigate the circumstances that have led to that particular tragedy. We would seek to determine the root causes so that preventative measures can be reinforced, and also to determine if there are any negligence on the part of the relevant or any relevant party. We will announce the terms of reference for the inquiry and appointment of the members of that particular inquiry in due course, after duly consulting with all the relevant stakeholders. And any further action will be determined having duly considered the outcome of the inquiry and recommendations made.
We are still writing the relevant terms of reference, but importantly, the basis is the law and the regulations that are there. Of importance is the determination whether or not any of those regulations or laws have been flouted, and whether those who are responsible parties to organizing the event, and we mean all of them, from police to the PSL to the sponsors to everybody who had a role, the stadium management, everybody who had a role to play in as far as full enforcement of those laws. The inquiry is to test and validate whether all those laws and regulations were followed to the letter and to their spirit, and to determine whether, and as the Minister has indicated, to rule out any possible negligence on any of the responsible parties.
Right now, as we said a little earlier, at 11 o'clock, we believe that at the PSL offices right here in Parktown, Johannesburg, we will have basically a press conference that will be held so that all of us and all of you can find out where to next, and maybe we might even get terms of reference for that, that commission that the Minister was speaking about just now. Now, all of this, of course, overshadowed the action on the pitch. Kaizer Chiefs fans were celebratory as they found out that their team, Kaizer Chiefs, became the champions of the Carling Cup. Amakosi beat Orlando Pirates 1-0 at the FNB Stadium. Now let's take a quick look at some of the action that saw that goal happen.
Lovely ball to the far side, trying to set up Mr. Pay is inside the box. Parker's first shot, and it is in the back of the net. Kaiser Chiefs announcing their arrival. And it is Bernard Parker. Inept on the far side, they got caught and were punished. Timol, the captain of the side, who will lift it aloft as Kaiser Chiefs are the Black Label Champion Cup winners. The 7th edition, of course, of 2017. That means they win it for the 3rd time, and they're defending it for the 1st time ever, after Orlando Pirates having done that twice. They were dominant in some stances, tactically too.
Well, there you have it, Kaizer Chiefs winning that 7th edition of the Carling Cup. We'll obviously stay very close to that story, and we'll be bringing you the updates as and when they happen. Stay close for that 11 o'clock presser at the PSL offices in just a few minutes' time. We'll take a short break. We'll be back shortly. You've been watching Newsroom.
The only way to pour the perfect beer, this professional barman would tell you, is into a glass tilted at exactly 45 degrees. Oh, bless you. Bless you, sir. Bless you again. Well, we'd say the perfect way to pour a beer is at this angle, straight into your mouth.
Get a 12-pack of Castle Lager 500ml cans for $104.99 from Tops at Spar.
After a horrific accident, major questions were asked.
So step one, I asked myself, do I really want to die? And my answer to that was, I'm not sure. And then step two was, do I want my parents to bury me? And the answer to that was no.
Lanning kept his brain in full action on how the brain works.
When I was in hospital, right, as I was saying, to catch up with my peers, I started to become obsessed with memory techniques and how the brain works and how we retain information.
Touching lives is his continuous mission.
I now work for a non-profit where we deal with access issues regarding kids with disabilities and persons with disability. We're busy working on beach access.
Being wheelchair-bound did not stop fun in his life.
I party in a wheelchair, I laugh in a wheelchair, I smile in a wheelchair.
For all your uplifting stories, catch Bupilong every Friday.
I think winter is definitely one of those seasons where you can really show off your sartorial choices. You can start from a single layer of a shirt, actually starting with thermals, build it up with the shirts. You can have beautiful knits over the shirts, like we've done with Jay.
This film tells the story of a very, very significant political figure in the struggle for freedom in South Africa, who happened to be a woman. She was Nelson Mandela's wife.
The exhibition is an exploration into black femininity. Tabitha is a woman of colour, and she is exploring the historical exploitation of the black female body.
Newtown Junction Mall hosted an epic contest in the cold where 3 top South African graffiti artists battled it out for the opportunity to become the Newtown Graffiti Face-Off Master.
For your weekly dose of entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
What guides us? What leads us forward? Is it leaders on a soapbox, spouting rhetoric for the crowd? Is it the actions of our people? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people. And your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
These are the dusty streets of Winterveld in Soshanguve, where people thought nothing good can come out of it. Noma Mahlango started a youth development project to change everyone's perception about her community. This is her story.
The community project of Golden Youth Club, it started in 2001. And then when it started, it didn't even have a name. I was just doing homeworks with them and motivating my peers to say, we come from Winterveld. Everyone says Winterveld. Only people who are coming from Winterveld. They are thugs, and there's nothing good that it's coming from my area.
This project blossomed from its inception.
We entered some competition. And then immediately when we started to enter the competition, we won the competition that we were entering. Like it started, our project, like as long as it started, in terms of being recognized. We got one event, the first event, it was in school at Lesola. When we come out, there was someone who was waiting for us, and then someone recognized it from City of Tshwane. Her name is Sharon Kruger, and she said, no, I like this project, and then started to find out about us and then teaching me how to do the constitution. This is an organization. You need to register. We're like, really? Say, you need to register this. Golden Youth Club in our project out too. No? One project is for performing art, music, dance, theater, anything that's called performing art. This is what we are doing. We do some exchange. We go to Germany and then have some conferences and we share what we have learned. This year we went 3 times to Germany. The last person that will be going, it's me. Within 2 weeks' time, I'm going for the preparation year next year. And then we have volunteers that are coming here for the whole year. And then our kids, they go, maybe one go to Germany for the whole year and learn about culture. And they also learn. When the Germans comes here, they stay in township. They eat what we eat. They do what we do. They don't need special treatment. It's like they are here to learn our culture. As much as when you go to Germany, you have to learn the language.
We asked Norma about the future plans for the Golden Youth Club.
The future plans, a project here to Tina Esi, Funa Uguyenza, is to build the youth center. I have a plan, youth center, which is including AMA dormants, because we call it youth hostel. Due to my exchange programs, the Germans were willing to help somehow in order to build the structure, but we applied for the land for the long time, but we couldn't. So if we can find the land for building a youth center yet, because the youth center it has like computer center, library, and it has the dormants, it has a small theater, and then in a site, recycling project. This is a job creation, and then those young people who couldn't find the jobs, they can work within that project. It's something that it's big. It's a bigger vision, and then it can stay forever. So isifiso sami esenhlizweni yamanje lokho. If ungasaksucceed lokho, then I sengamane ngicime.
Yes, it's a Blue Monday, 1100 hours Central Africa time, on the 31st of July, the last day of July 2017. Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome. I'm Elvis Preslin.
I'm Kendall Muhammad.
We'll be with you until 12 o'clock. Now, today, Kendall, we are conducting a poll on cannabis in South Africa, which is still illegal. But, of course, the trial of the plant gets underway to challenge the constitutionality of South Africa's cannabis laws. That's why we're asking this question.
I want to find out from you, do you support the full, I repeat, full legalization of cannabis in South Africa?
Well, so far, 340 of you have voted. 72% of you are saying that you do support the legalization of cannabis. 28% are saying no.
Very interesting. Let's see what's being said as the reasons for the way this vote has gone. Azania says, legalize marijuana to free our people from discrimination and mental slavery. Weed is just a plant and can grow our economy.
Well, there you are, from mental slavery as well. Remember Bob Marley? Azania continues.
Saying it's approved.
This one from Mandling Courts, he says, legalize Mary Jane, but criminalize public smoking of whatever is being smoked. Don't just smoke it up.
Interesting there.
Well, then, of course, we are also conducting we are asking you a question rather today. You know, Saturday, you've been talking about this the entire morning, yes, about the Stampede at the FNB, tragic event, and of course what came out of that, and that's why we're asking you, what do you make of this particular issue? Could the FNB Stadium disaster have been handled better, Kendall?
Yeah, the stadium disaster happened. 2 people got killed, some 16 or 17 got crushed in different conditions, and the match carried on. And at no point was there a pause to speak of it or condolences. And we want to find out from you, do you think that the FNB Stadium disaster could have been handled better?
You also know that we probably might be going there live in a short while because it's going to kick off at around about 11 o'clock. But let's take a look at what you're telling us. I am says, or the fans are to be blamed. We arrive late and we buy our tickets via the back door. Those fake tickets that we were talking about earlier.
Absolutely. Hlonini Tunyani says, why did stadium management allow the game to start while there were still scores of people outside? Of course, that's been a big talking point as well, where Grobler from stadium management said, look, they had a look at the situation and assessed it and decided that no, they did not need to make the game start a little later.
Well, these are some of your comments. Please keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. But we're also asking another stadium-related matter where it was the Lions devouring another team.
Yeah, they ran the Hurricanes ragged over the weekend, beating them by a very healthy margin. And these Hurricanes are the very same defending champions and the same team who knocked the Lions out in the semis last year.
Some are saying that this was the final, actually, before the final.
Well, no, the Lions still have the final in them. They didn't play their last final. No, we don't buy that. The Lions are going to go through and they're going to beat the Crusaders. But we want to I want to find out from you, what do you make of the Lions' sensational comeback win to reach the final this coming weekend?
Let's take a look at what you're telling us. On the Nazim says that was an amazing comeback from the Lions team. They played.
No, Nazim, they didn't.
Well, this one, the final before the final.
No,
this one is the one you argue
with. He says they played their final before the final. They're done with their finals. No. Frank Lukoikoi says, what a game. I just love the comeback. Make the Lions Springboks. They will win next week. You know what? The Crusaders are 7-time champions, and the Crusaders have been topping the log all along until they slipped up, and that's why the Lions managed to top the log overall.
Well, that's where we got to leave it for now. Obviously, we're going to read your comments as we continue, but right now, let's take a look at your news headlines.
Well, you know what? We're also waiting for waiting for the press conference happening at the PSL. And we also wanted to find out if what's happening at the Ahmed Timol inquiry, which I think is happening right now.
I wouldn't call that torture.
Not torture.
I wouldn't call that torture.
And mock executions?
Mock
executions. Or hanging people over stairs. Were you aware of that?
No.
Of what type of torture were you aware of?
I was only aware of torture as revealed in the press, in the media. What was mentioned then was what I would say, that's what I've heard, that's what I've read. I wasn't aware of it taking place in my presence, in my company.
Did you know a person by the name Gert van Tonder? Did he work at John Foster Square?
The name rings a bell. I cannot say. Well, I would have known him if it's a member of the branch.
You received some medals and commendations. Can you just elaborate on that?
It would have been the normal police service medal for X amount of service years. The Southern Cross medal for border duties, and a bar on the medal, which would have been an extra medal also for border duty activities.
My Lord, that concludes my questioning. Thank you. My junior, just one more question with the leave of the court. Mr. Elsa, I just want to know, was anybody else, except for the security guards, allowed on the 9th and the 10th floor?
The public?
Yes, public or anybody else from State departments, etc. Was anybody else allowed on the 9th and 10th floor?
If they had a reason to be there, yes.
Also the public?
The public would have been allowed, I suppose, with police escort, my lord.
So there would be control of the people that come to the 9th and 10th
yes.
floor? Thank you, my lord.
Mr. Els, you say that you were aware of the torture and assaults from the media, reports in the media. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I said, my lord.
And as members of the security branch, was there an occasion where, with your colleagues, you discussed these allegations that were in the media about the torture and assaults? Did you discuss this?
It was spoken amongst members as a conversation, yes, my lord.
And what was the mood of the conversation? What was it about?
It would have been casual, not serious.
And are you aware of any members in the security branch who were ever charged with assault?
I believe there were. Personally, I never saw them. I never spoke to them directly.
Do you know the person by the name of Colonel Greyland?
Colonel Greyland was the commanding officer in a period that I was at John Foster Square.
In fact, according to the evidence and the statements here, Colonel Greyland was in charge of all the members of the security branch who were interrogating Mr. Timol. Would you agree with that?
As the commanding officer, I
Yes.
take it that would have been his responsibility.
Yes. And Colonel Greyling was also a respondent in a case that was brought by Mr. Salim Esop, Salim Esop's father, seeking his release. Do you know about that case?
No, I don't, my lord.
Let me tell you about it because it's important. When Mr. Salim Esop was admitted at the hospital in a coma, the father approached High Court. At that time, it was called the Transvaal Provincial Division of the Supreme Court, that is this division. And he sought an interdict to stop the assault on Salim Esop. Now, Colonel Greyling was cited as a second respondent in that case. And the two judges who heard that application rejected his version that there were no assaults on Mr. Esop. The two judges rejected it. And they held that he was less than honest to the court in his affidavit when he said that there were no assaults on Mr. Esop. Now, Mr. Esop, Salim Esop, is the person who was arrested with Mr. Timol. Now, the court, in the end, found that, in fact, he was assaulted, Mr. Salim Esop. And they granted the interdict. Now, with that background, And I've noticed that Colonel Greyling was not one of the witnesses during the inquest in 1972, because that judgment came in February and the inquest started in April. So when the inquest started, 2 judges of this court had already found that Colonel Greyling was lying, was not telling the truth about the assault. Now, with that background, I want you to say now whether you still assert that you heard about the assaults from the media and nowhere else and you never saw them. Do you still stand by that?
I personally was not present when a accused was. If he was assaulted, I wasn't present during assaults on detainees. On the particular case where Colonel Greyling was the commanding officer, I knew him as a person. I was not involved otherwise with the investigation of the particular case.
Mr. Van, we are approaching the tea break hour. Would you like to start at 11:30?
As a court case?
Yes, I see it's now 11. If you start at 11:30, because I think it will be some time with this witness.
Yes, no.
Yeah, okay, then we'll start at 11:30.
As the court case?
Yes, we'll adjourn until 11:30.
As a break gets taken in the North Gauteng High Court at the Ahmed Timol inquiry, we go now live to the PSL offices in Parktown, Johannesburg, where a press conference on the FNB Stadium disaster is being held, hosted by Dr. Evan Khoza and Kaiser Mutaung. Let's go there now live.
Chiefs, Mr. Kaiser Mutaung, to come and address the media and the South African public and the supporters and the footballing family at large. Also joined by Mr. Jacques Grobler from Stadium Management, and to really give a statement on the matters that have taken place and the process forward. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Dr. Ivan Khoza.
Thank you very much, Madam Jessica. Before we start, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Orlando Pirates Football Club and Kaizer Chiefs, we wanted to extend our condolences to the families of the 2 deceased members. For the record, we are told that there is one name that has been given to us because the family has been contacted. The other member, they got hold of the girlfriend, but they still have to get hold of the family to make sure that officially everybody is informed. Because of that, it's difficult for us to make mention of the name of that person. I will ask everybody to stand to observe the moment of silence for Mr. Prince Chauke from Sabi branch, and also the member that has not been disclosed, with view of the members of the family not being contacted. Before we start, shall we rise and observe a moment of silence? May their souls repose peacefully. Thank you.
Before Dr. Khoza continues, I'd like to clarify that we will not be taking questions after the statements have been made, and we will then address the media at an appropriate time. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I also want to acknowledge Andrea from the sponsors, is in our midst. I know that Madam Jessica has introduced the panel at the top table. Andreas is sitting somewhere. He is in this meeting as one of the stakeholders in this event. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Saturday was meant to be a season opener where Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs were meant to display their new signings, giving a glimpse of what their supporters and the nation can expect in the 2017-2018 season. There was, unfortunately, incidences which led to fatalities. So let me say from the outset that nobody goes to a soccer match to die. So when whatever incident leads to people dying, it is a tragedy which must make us stop and pause to ensure there is never a repeat of the same. I assure you that no stone will be left unturned. The process to investigating what really happened, the causes and the possible remedies will be gone about in a way that recognizes that people have lost their lives. Ladies and gentlemen, the two clubs applied to the league for permission to host this event. And the permission was granted to say re-permission to participate in the friendly tournament. Permission is granted to participate in the Carling Cup on Saturday, the 29th July 2017 at FNB Stadium on the conditions that all legislations is adhered to. In particular, the Sasria Act 2 of 2010 regards Selwyn van Wyk Football Department. Because of the instructive nature of the letter, as two chairmen, we sat down deliberating this matter and have decided that we must go and serve this letter to the CEO of the league when we finish here. And that is why, for convenience sake, we've asked to hold this press conference here to make sure that we waste no time in making sure action must take place around this matter. And I want to read the letter that we are sending to the league from the two clubs. Dear Madam, Acting Chief Executive Officer, National Soccer League, PSL House, 2 Manchester Road, Parktown, Johannesburg. Parktown, North Johannesburg. You'll be aware of the tragic events which transpired at the friendly match between Orlando Pirates Football Club and Kaizer Chiefs Football Club on Saturday, 29 July 2017. Nothing that we do or say can bring back the supporters that died or the impact this will have on their families and those of any others who were harmed. In circumstances such as this, it is, however, imperative that we do everything possible to ensure that we understand precisely what happened, whether there were any illegal or other shortcomings at the event that led to the tragic death of supporters and harm and risk to others, or whether there were any additional steps that could have been taken to avoid what happened. That is why, very least we can do in the circumstances, and it is essential. It is important that we take the necessary steps to establish the facts immediately before time passes and evidence and witnesses are lost or memories fade. Both Pirates and Chiefs are determined to ensure that this is done effectively and properly. As participants in the event, both clubs will ensure that the club's officials, service providers, and anyone concerned in the event assist in this endeavor. We do not believe it would be appropriate for one or both clubs to arrange or conduct the investigation. It must be clear that the investigation is not only independent and impartial, but that it's obvious to all that it is the case. The League's objectives include the promotion, administration, control, and governance of all professional football in the country, and in particular, safety and other standards in professional football. It seems appropriate to us and essential as part of ensuring that there is clear independence in the process of establishing the facts that the League should oversee any such investigation. We consequently propose the following and ask that you submit it to the members of the Executive Committee as a matter of urgency. 1, that the League appoint an independent person of unquestioned integrity to investigate precisely what transpired at the event. 2, that the person be tasked to establish not only the facts, but also whether there were any shortcomings as regards safety and security at the event, whether arising from the SASRIA, OHSA, or any other aspect of planning and implementation. 3, that the persons concerned be instructed to obtain all necessary reports of relevance, including from the SABs, the stadium, the safety and security service providers, and the clubs and the sponsors, and to do so on an urgent basis. That the person concerned be instructed to provide a full report to the Executive Committee within 14 days to ensure that a proper assessment can be made as regards the appropriate steps to be taken in relation to the matter. In this regard, both Dr. Ivan Khoza and Mr. Keza Mutaung will recuse ourselves from this process. In our view, the most appropriate person to conduct such an investigation will be an eminent senior counsel. As we have said, for both clubs undertake to do everything possible to assist in the investigation. We have no doubt that the South African police, the stadium, and all other relevant role players will do the same. Yours sincerely, from Dr. Ivan Khoza and Keza Mutaung. But also, on Sunday morning, we met Sunday morning, after reflecting on this matter, we undertook visits, to the various hospitals, to Baragwanath, to Jabulani, Charles Maxeke, and Johannesburg Gen. The unfortunate part is that most of the other, people that were injured were discharged. But there was one serious incident of a person that was transferred to Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital. And I personally, with the instructions of Mr. Mutaung, because I'm near Soweto, to go and visit that person. The name of the person was Dlozi Kupega from Amersfoort. She was in a trauma unit where we've met with the sister in charge of trauma, Sister Teboho Mokwena, who gave us the report that the other members that were affected were P2 and P3 cases that were transferred to the various hospitals, that they were not supposed to be kept at the Baragwanath. The only one lady was kept there, and at that point we met at Ward 1. She was taken out of the respirator because her condition was improving. But also we went to the members of Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs, to Charles Maxeke, West Fiso, Zondo, and from Johannesburg CBD, Ala Kem Badu from Mayor Maibuya section, Tembisa were already discharged. But Priscilla Mohafe, we will know this place, from Mapong, outside press, was just waiting for the parents to collect her. At the time the family came, the members were there to see them in the hospital. So the above patients were discharged and treated by the hospital. Now, ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that we cannot take questions. We'd appreciate that in terms of the letter of the league, this game was played according to the SASRIA Act 2 of 2010. There are so many role players involved in this event. So therefore, at this point, we are gathering information to make sure that we leave no stone unturned, because it's a sensitive matter. We remember that we are victims of the Mwepe Commission. We do everything in our power whenever events of this nature are staged to make sure that we comply. I'm happy to announce that the service providers in this event, especially on security and safety, the man that was also a participant in the writing of the SASRIA Act, Mr. Patrick Ronan, was the person in charge. He was in charge of risks, and is a safety and security specialist in this country. So he was in charge of this aspect of the program. But also Mr. Jacques Robler, his stadium has won so many awards, was also responsible as the event organizer in this instance. So we are saying that, bear with us to make sure that we gather information, because there's one question that comes up to say why the game was not stopped. Now, this is a very difficult question, because if you stage the game according to the Act, the Act says, depending on the categorization, now in this instance, this was a medium risk categorization, which requires that the National Commissioner will appoint a chairperson who will be responsible for the Event and Safety and Security Planning Committee. That chairperson also becomes the VOC commander. If he becomes the VOC commander, it means everything happening in that game, he must be the one that gives the instructions. If there's a tragedy happening at the corner, if there's a tragedy happening outside the stadium, it's the one controlling the VOC, because the VOC assists in terms of having a 60-degree view of what is happening around the perimeter, outside the stadium. So he's the one who's in charge of the disaster management, the traffic flow, traffic control, all these other issues. He's responsible for those issues. But when it comes to the football side, I must also add, we had one of the most prominent, match commissioners, Ian McLeod. Now, if you look at the rules of the PSL, of the CAB and whatever, the ultimate responsibility of the authority lies with the match commissioner. But if you look at the laws of the game, who can stop the game? Only the referee. So there are all these things which makes it difficult to say how to deal with this issue. It is a moral issue that if ever somebody dies in your house, where there was a 21st birthday celebration, there was a wedding, if somebody dies, what happens? Can you go on with a wedding, with a party? There's another question. So for us, we are saying, before we can apportion blame to anybody, we want to establish the facts so that when we are able to answer, we're able to answer accordingly, because right now we're gathering facts. As I must say, also for the record, that in the stadium there was an emergency committee that was responsible for events inside the stadium, and that committee was established. But also there was a VOC commander, which was in charge for all other activities in the stadium. But there was a match commissioner who was also responsible to make sure that we comply with the laws of the game, Ian McLeod. So now all these things were the referee, also the referee's report must also say what actually happened. So whether the event happened inside the stadium or outside the stadium, or whatever, these things is for us to gather the facts, to be able to know that what actually went wrong. If you listen to the media, some supporters are complaining that, no, there was a problem with the traffic, there was a jam, there was an intersection, whatever. All those things, we're waiting for the reports to assist us to make sure that when you answer questions, we must give proper answers, because lives have been lost, so that also, if there are lessons learned, because we know that in life, there's no safety plan that is foolproof. We have seen what's happening all over the world, that, there are events that took place in England, Manchester, where there was the best security ever, but there were bombs that went off in those situations. So, but for us, we're saying we have lost, and we are learning every day, because we want to avoid these things as much as we can. So we're asking the members of the media and the family members to give us a bit of a chance to make sure that we gather information and present, because they are involved in an industry that is high profile. We're involved in an industry that manufactures emotions. We're involved in an industry that is responsible for the happiness index of this country. Therefore, it's very important that we must be sensitive, so that we must provide responsible answers. We don't want to apportion blame, but we are saying, because we are members of the league, and the league gave us permission according to what is in the safety manual of the league. So therefore, we must do the right thing, that give the league also the chance to establish the facts. So that whoever wants the facts, then the league, they've satisfied themselves without being involved ourselves to establish the facts independently. So that whatever information is required by whoever, they are able to supply that information. And if you are someone to come, must come and present whatever information must present to the relevant authorities. So we are asking at this point for your indulgence, that, let us ask you to give us that a bit of space to make sure that we fast track the process. As we leave here, going to the CEO of the league to present the letter, the two of us, to make sure that, it receives its utmost agency in the processing. Because obviously there must be a process of establishing a committee, but the executive committee must sit first, to make sure that, they agree or disagree. Or for them to say, no, the minister has announced another committee, maybe, we don't know. So the executive will take that to make that determination themselves as to how they want to see this matter being processed going forward. So I ask that, lastly, for the second time, we're expressing the extreme condolences, to the family members and those that were injured during the course of the event, those that also were affected psychologically by this incident that has happened. We are saying that we are sorry and we regret, but we make sure that, every time we do this thing, and Mr. Mtaung will tell you in the executive committee, we've written letters some time ago to the ministers concerned of sport and police to deal with the issues of the Sasria. Because there's a lot of things that, sometimes pose challenges to say, if this thing happens, what must happen? Because if the law says the Sasria Act is going to take precedent, so there's a football side of it, and the football persons, but you can't say that. There's a moral issue, there's an ethical issue, there's an African issue to say, as Africans, if there's death, this must happen. So now all those issues are a bit, challenging. So now those gray areas, we're trying to find a way of how to deal with them, so that in the future we know how to respond to those issues. So and maybe situations like this, they help us, to clarify those issues. So we are asking that at this point in time, we observe, this, difficult moment with us, and make sure that whatever happens is done in the best interest of the supporters of this country, and make sure that whatever we've done our utmost best. If there are shortcomings, we'll do those shortcomings. So before I conclude, I'll ask Mr. Mtaung to say something, on this particular matter.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would also like to take this opportunity to endorse what Dr. Khoza has already said. I don't want to repeat everything he said, but safe to say that we are very much touched about what happened on Saturday, because we've gone this route before, and none of us at this day and age still expected something like this, of this nature, to happen. Unfortunately, life obviously has its own challenges, and things do happen, and sometimes history repeats itself in many ways. I would like to take this opportunity to express, on behalf of both clubs, our sincere condolences to those families affected, the bereaved families, and also those who suffered injuries, and hope that they get a speedy recovery. We are going to engage, obviously, with the families of the deceased from here on, and I'm sure we are also contemplating to organize a memorial service as and when we get information of the other person who has not been disclosed to us yet. So I just want to share the same sentiments that Dr. Khoza has said regarding everything that we are doing. We felt that it's important for us to take ourselves out of this, so that we're not accused of investigating ourselves, but rather take it to the right forum, which is the league in this case, to deal with it in a very appropriate manner, and that we gather all the necessary facts before we can make any further steps or any further statements regarding this incident. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all, members of the media, for your presence. It was a very short notice, but we thank you for having taken your time to be part of this occasion with us here. And I thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, members of the media. It certainly is a sad situation, but we appreciate you being here to be able to share the information with the public. And as Dr. Khoza has said, there will be an independent inquiry, and we will then address the media at the appropriate time. With that, I would like to thank you once again and to close proceedings.
Right there, you heard it from Dr. Ivan Khoza as well as Kaiser Motaung, the respective chiefs and bosses at Orlando Pirates Football Club, as well as Kaiser Chiefs, speaking to us there about the FNB Stampede. You heard that they are contemplating a memorial service, which they'll finalize details of as soon as they've got permission to release the name of the second deceased. And Mr. Khoza also saying that, Mr. Patrick Ronan was in charge of risk, and Mr. Grobler from Stadium Management was also involved in charge there. And they've been working with them. And Stadium Management has, of course, received awards for its organization of events in all of its venues. Khoza and Motaung have recused themselves from the process because they do not want to be accused of basically investigating themselves. There will be more coming from that a little later. Jessica Motaung, closing proceedings, was saying no questions will be answered at the present moment. Of course, today we've also been very busy bringing you the proceedings from the Ahmed Timol inquiry at the North Gauteng High Court. We go back there live as former police security branch members give their testimony.
It's C13 or
it's
C3?
It's C12, my lord.
Which one are we talking about? Because what I have here is C13 and C14 and C12. Oh yes,
it's an A3 sheet, my lord.
You say what is it about?
That is a schedule of interrogators who questioned or interviewed Mr. Kane Nike during his period of detention at John Vorster Square.
Okay.
Then the next exhibit is Dr. Nike's testimony before the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and that is marked C13.
Yes.
Then the third document is a table compiled by my legal team. It's titled Torture Alleged at John Vorster Square. And the date, my lord, should be between the 23rd of October and the 27th of October 1971. I'm advised that actually it says the 21st of October, but in fact it should read the 23rd of October. And then finally, my lord, in case we need it, we've provided the court and our colleagues with a calendar for 1971, and we've marked that Exhibit L.
You all council have copies of these documents. Do you have them? And Pretoria, you have them?
We've got copies there.
Yes.
And my lord, the witness, to the extent he needs, has also been supplied with copies. And I should say we've also supplied the witness with Dr. Nike's affidavit. That's at page 105 of Volume C, as well as Mr. Nike's Department of Justice file, and that's at G3. Lord, with your leave, I'll commence with my cross-examination. Mr. Else, before I commence with my cross-examination, I just want to point out to you that this proceeding is not a criminal trial. It's about truth-seeking. I'm not here to try and trick you, and we're not here to sit in judgment of you. All the legal representatives here and all the witnesses who have appeared before this court are involved in a process to help His Lordship reach the truth, and also to help the family of Mr. Timol to reach closure, as well as to help our country to reach closure on this matter. And if you're tired or need a break, then simply ask the court, and the court will consider your request. Mr. Els, you have advised us when you joined the police and when you joined the security branch, which you say was in 1966 or 67. Can I ask you, when did you start work at John Vorster Square in Johannesburg?
When the new offices were opened, we were at a building with the name The Greys down in the centre of Johannesburg before.
So you in fact started the very day that the building opened for operations?
I would say so, yes.
Mr. Els, who asked you to go to Newlands Police Station on the evening of 23rd October 1971?
It would have been a call from the uniformed police at Newlands Police Station, my lord.
And just to clarify, were you the after-hours duty officer for the security branch that evening?
Would have been, my lord.
And so what would your hours have been for that particular night?
I would say right through the night.
So when would you have started work?
In the morning of that particular day, on a continuous basis.
I see. So if you're the duty officer, then you have to stay on all through the night?
You're on call, virtually, yes.
On call. And what time would you knock off in the morning?
No, I can't recall.
You can't recall?
No.
But would you say it was when the sun was up, when it was daytime?
No, I just can't remember.
You can't recall, okay. And why were you asked to come over and actually inspect these particular documents?
I suppose it's the fact that certain literature was found in the car, and I was to look at that.
I see. And did you have perhaps some previous experience with subversive
literature,
leaflets, communist propaganda?
Yes, I've seen some before, but I cannot recall the detail of those.
But you would say that you had some experience in recognizing
yes.
that those kinds of documents? You've testified in your evidence in chief that after you called Captain Durker in and he had arrived, you left Newlands, and that you played no further role in this matter.
As far as I can remember, my lord, yes, I played no further role.
I put it to you that given the magnitude of the events of that evening, would it have been eminently possible that you would have been further involved, perhaps in interrogating individuals, even if it wasn't Mr. Timol, perhaps arresting others, or maybe even examining these documents further?
I was not involved in the arresting of anybody after that. I may have looked at the documents in question, but other detail I simply cannot remember, my lord.
Mr. Els, where was Captain Durker's office situated at John Vorster Square?
I cannot remember that. It would have been on one of the two floors mentioned, 9th or the 10th.
9th floor, the 10th. Was it perhaps close to where your office was situated, near the lifts?
I cannot recall.
Okay. But you have indicated where your office was located? You said it was on the 9th floor, not so far from
Not far from the entrance.
From the entrance and the lifts. And should this court conduct a further inspection at John Vorster Square, you would be able to point out your...
More or less, yes, if it's the same.
Yes. Well, obviously, I can tell you that in terms of the structure of the building, that hasn't changed in any substantial way. Mr. Els, according to the statement of Captain Durker, and my lord, for the record, that statement can be found in Volume B at Exhibit NN, at pages 98 to 99. So according to Captain Durker's statement, he was the investigating officer looking into the distribution of 3 documents, and he names them in Kululeko Freedom Number 1. The title of the second one is the ANC says no to Foster Anna's gang, and the third document is Sons and Daughters of Africa. Now, there is evidence before this court, and we'll need more evidence, is that these South African Communist Party and ANC leaflets were part of a hugely successful distribution campaign carried out in 1970 and 71. And you in fact, have mentioned that part of the manner of distribution was to use these bucket bombs, yes, these small explosive devices. We'll also hear from a witness to testify later this week that the government was under enormous pressure to apprehend those behind this leaflet campaign. Were you aware of any strategy put in place by the security branch to address this illegal distribution of leaflets, this campaign run by the SACP and the ANC?
It may have been that we were informed by the commanding officer to be on the lookout for such distributions or methods of distribution, my lord.
And prior to the arrest of Mr. Timol and Mr. Esop, were you aware of any arrests that had been made in connection with this leaflet campaign?
I cannot recall, no.
Can you recall whether at the time this national leaflet campaign, which happened across the country in cities such as Cape Town, Johannesburg, Durban and Port Elizabeth, can you recall whether this was quite a big embarrassment to the government?
I would say it would have been.
So Captain Durker, being the investigating officer into this leaflet campaign, do you recall whether he was very pleased, very happy to have caught Mr. Timol and Mr. Esop, given the contents of the documents that were seized?
I cannot say if he was or not, no, my lord.
Did Captain Durker hold the view that that the security branch in arresting Mr. Timol had caught the mastermind, or perhaps one of the key role players in this campaign?
That I cannot say, my lord.
Did you have occasion to talk to Captain Durker following your return to John Vorster Square, or any time thereafter, in connection with this incident?
I may have been speaking to him on certain aspects, but I cannot recall any detail if it was.
did the security branch consider the arrest of Mr. Ahmed Timol? Did they regard Mr. Timol to be an important figure, or as we sometimes say, a big fish?
At what stage? Immediately?
Well, once the documents had been inspected and they realized who they had in their hands.
I cannot say they would have regarded him as a big fish, no. As a suspect, yes, but I cannot think that he would have been termed a big fish.
Right. Well, indeed, there is evidence put forward in the first inquest that he was seen as a big fish or an important figure. For example, Lieutenant Colonel van Wyk. Before I put to you what he said, do you recall that Lieutenant Colonel van Wyk?
Only the name rings a bell. I cannot visualize him at this stage, my lord.
Well, in Lieutenant Colonel van Wyk's statement before the first inquest, and my lord, that's also Volume B, Exhibit F, pages 8 to 11, paragraph 7. He says in his statement before the first inquest that because Mr. Timol was in direct contact with the SACP Central Committee and he was in control of the main unit in South Africa, the main SACP unit, that he was of onskatbare waarde to the security branch. Onskatbare waarde. I would interpret that as an inestimable value.
Yes.
And Colonel van Wyk then goes on to say that because of the value of this particular detainee, it was immediately decided not to hold him in the cells because communists had previously escaped from the cells and also had been able to communicate with people on the outside. So given his importance and given these dangers, it was decided to place him under guard, not in the cells, but in the offices of the security branch at John Vorster Square. Mr. Els, would that mean that Mr. Timol would have been under guard round the clock by trained and able-bodied policemen?
If that is what the Colonel mentioned, I suppose it would have been.
But what was the practice at that time for detainees who were held not in the cells but in the offices? Were they under 24/7 round the clock?
Well, they would have been, because they they would not have been left alone, no.
Yes. And even when interrogation stopped, would they be guarded by trained and able-bodied policemen, perhaps from the protection unit?
I wouldn't say the protection unit, but members of the security branch that were on duty would have guarded them in the absence of the interrogator.
And these would have been trained policemen and physically able-bodied?
Trained? They would have been policemen, yes.
And yet at the time when Timol allegedly committed suicide, the police version says that he was left entirely alone with a pay clerk.
With a?
With a pay clerk, an administrative clerk who pays police members.
I cannot confirm that.
But are you surprised to hear that he was left alone with
to me, it doesn't sound right, my lord.
It doesn't sound right.
No.
And furthermore, Mr. Timol's detention order says that he should have been detained at the cells of John Vorster Square. So presumably when he was not being interrogated, the detention order, which governed his detention, said that he must be held in the cells?
That could be, my lord.
And would you agree with me that, given the evidence of the police, that in fact he was, even when he was not being interrogated, he was not held at the cells, but in the offices, that conduct was plainly unlawful?
I'm not aware of that, so I cannot comment on that, my lord.
Well, let me rephrase this. If the detention order says, hold this man in the police cells at John Vorster Square, one can understand that from time to time the detainee would be taken for questioning in an office. But when the questioning is complete and the interrogators then leave the office,
he would be taken back.
One would expect the detainee to be taken back.
I think so, yes, my lord.
Now, in the case of Mr. Timol, and indeed in the case of other detainees from whom we've heard, detained at John Vorster Square at that time, some of them were never taken back to their cells, and in fact they were held in the offices and even slept in the offices. So I'm putting it to you that where there is a detention order that says detain somebody in the police cells, and in fact post-interrogation or between interrogations they are kept at the offices on the 9th or the 10th floor, that is unlawful conduct because it violates the detention order.
It must be as you explained, my lord.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Ells, you've said that, you've testified in your evidence in chief that you did not see Mr. Timol at any time. You're quite certain of that?
I cannot recall seeing him, no.
Did you see any other detainees between the 22nd and the 27th of October 1971 in John Vorster Square?
Detainees relating to this inquest?
Yes, related to this inquest, security detainees.
I cannot recall, no, my lord.
Well, although we will get to it, and you have said so in response to questions from Mr. Pretorius that you did question Mr. K. Nike, who was a detainee at John Vorster Square at that time.
I may have been involved in sitting in during questioning, if it's on record, yes, but the detail regarding that I cannot remember.
All right, we'll return to Mr. Nike's case shortly. Did you see any other detainee between the 22nd and the 27th of October 1971, either in an office or perhaps in the corridors, perhaps being taken to the bathroom or perhaps being moved from one office to another, any detainee who appeared to be distressed or injured in any way?
No, I cannot recall that, my lord.
When you happened to be in the corridors of the 9th floor and the 10th floor, did you ever see detainees being moved between offices? And this is not necessarily over those particular days.
I may not have even been in the building because I was away for periods of months. I cannot recall. I'm sorry.
Okay. Have you ever seen a detainee being escorted in the corridors of John Vorster Square?
I would have seen them, yes. Walking, maybe passing in the corridor, I could have, yes.
Yes. And in any one of those occasions, did you ever see a detainee with a hood or his, with a mask over his face, in other words, to obscure his vision?
That I cannot recall, my Lord.
And just for the record, and this question relates to at any time that you worked at John Vorster Square for the security branch, did you ever see a detainee who appeared to be injured or in some form of distress?
Personally, no.